This is a good side. Maybe we should like.
All right, we're going.
We'll do that in the video afterwards.
Recording is going.
All right. How's everyone doing?
Good.
Good? How many people are still working on the Red Hat labs?
Really?
Raise your hands. Oh, I know. I know you. I see you guys. That's fine. You can keep doing that. Laptops are not required for this. It will be, you can probably do some things in your laptop. It's really going to be a more interactive workshop. I'll give you a little background on why that is. So I apologize in advance if this is some of the stuff that you weren't expecting. I'll go through what this will be and what this won't be, so everyone's kind of aware beforehand. So you don't sit here for 2 hours waiting for the labs or the, anything like that. So a little bit about me. I'm Information Security Officer in local government. Also a managing partner with a software development company called Code Red. Essentially, also play a weapons instructor. And unicorns and all the things security. Frequent talker, go over to all the things. You might have heard me speak before. And does anyone know what that is in the corner? There you go, look at that. All right, so this is going to be a little more interactive. I'll go through some of the agenda here. I'm going to do a lecture and discussion. I really want the lecture and some of the things that I'm talking about to be kind of a two-way thing. How this came to be a workshop, I did submit just a 1-hour talk here, and then they contacted me about a month before the con and said, hey, can you do a workshop? So this is what I have put together. So I apologize for you guys being my guinea pigs here. We were also supposed to have, I'm going to give Benny a lot of crap for this, but we were supposed to have a full instance of the automation orchestration as well as the centralized logging in the CTF environment. We were going to actually be able to give access into that and actually be able to build out some of these enrichment engines as well as a lot of automation. That's what we could do in the CTF environment. So as people were attacking the CTF environment, we would see events come in, and we were going to have some kind of pre-built events go through and do some triage and kind of automate some alerting and see all the context and everything get from there. Obviously, some of the threat intelligence stuff wouldn't work because it's all internal IPs on the network and things like that. But we're gonna try to set that up so we don't have that. But we will talk about that. We'll talk about the concepts. We'll talk about the concepts of automating security operations, where to focus at, as well as go through tool time on a budget. Again, this is on a budget, so there are a lot of enterprise tools that can do these things. There are enterprise orchestration and automation engines. There's a lot of things out there, and some of the tools that we'll talk about. There's probably 6 different dozen tools that we'll be able to do what we're going to do. We have a few that I use, so we're going to be going through some of those. But I'll mention other ones, and if anyone's had any other ones, we can talk about those as well. And then we'll have an exercise time, kind of more of the workshop. It's going to be a modified tabletop. How many people have done a tabletop exercise? Cool, like that. So this is going to be a modified version of a 15-minute tabletop. 15-minute tabletops is kind of the term I have for them, are just very, very low level or high level tabletops. One scenario, you have a few injects, and you're just discussion based, and you just kind of fill out an after action report. This is a little modified to focus at learning what part of your incident response or security operations or even IT operations can be focused on being automated for time to remediation. So we'll go over that as well. So, as I said, workshop, what it is and what it's not. It's not a hands-on workshop, sorry. You guys don't beat me up over that. We're not going to be building any automation infrastructure. We only have a few hours here. Even the environment that we're going to do here, I mean, you have the build automation, and I'm not talking about just having Ansible do things and having Shepherd Puppet. I mean, this is going to be security operations and incident response automation as well. So there's a lot of things that go into that are kind of you can have 10 different servers running, or at least VMs running and stuff like that. So we're not going to solve all your problems. I don't have unicorns and keyboard elves working, and we're not aren't going to talk about any cyber immunity, AI, Skynet systems. Huh?
No Skynet?
No Skynet. That's if I had 3 more hours, we would cover Skynet. Unicorn net, yeah. What this is, again, as I said, it's an overview, automation, how it fits into security operations, and kind of what you need for that. You have to have a pretty, I wouldn't say mature, but definitely foundational security environment to start doing automating anything, because your automation is only be as good as first of all, your skill set, your staff, as well as the data and the items and processes that you have built in that, right? Just like any piece of software or any even process, it's only going to be as good as what you put into it, right? So if you don't have those built, then you're not going to have good automation at all, right? And we're going to review some frameworks, tools, resources, technical frameworks to build out automation on a budget. We'll go over those. I wish we could go more into the tools. I do have a couple demo instances that I have access to, but again, without setting up a full environment and having full caseloads kind of loaded in there, we just don't have that. It won't give you the full kind of aspect, but we can definitely talk about it. So the goals, understanding the basic components and role of automation. There are things that you really want to focus on automation, there's things that you don't want to focus on automation at first. I mean, obviously the goal is to automate as much as possible in any type of IT environment, but you definitely want to focus. If you don't have a lot of the foundational items in certain places of your security operations or IT operations, then you might be able to automate something there, maybe something that is accurate and has the data that you need to do the automations and workflows that you have available. Again, identifying areas of automation. Even if you can't do some of this automation or you have the capabilities of it, you can definitely, the tabletops are good, especially the small tabletops are very useful in just identifying areas of basically just improvement. It doesn't even have to be automations. It could be process improvements, and that's really the goal of any tabletop exercise, to identify gaps and have deliverables at the end. From the people that said that they have done tabletops before, are those official like 1 day, 2 day full tabletops, or were those like half-day tabletops? And just shout out.
Full day.
Full day, yeah. So, nice thing about was what I've done with some of the 15, actually it's a whole work group of people that have built the 15-minute tabletops. You can take, an IT team, and maybe even some upper management. You can just have like an hour and a half meeting, and you can do a full tabletop. Again, it's not going to be as intensive. You're not going to have multiple inject scenarios. You're not going to have all your policies and procedures out there to, but you'll definitely go through a scenario and identify large gaps. So a lot of people that are building automation on a budget probably don't have the resources to do, full day, multi-day tabletops and stuff like that. So that's good that a lot of people here have. I assume that some of those people are probably government employees, maybe. No, we'll get into that. I am going to have people basically introduce themselves. If you don't want to introduce yourself, what you do, because I want to get a fit of the audience, feel free not to. So yeah, right here, discussion time. So if you don't feel comfortable, I just want to get a kind of lay of the land to the audience and stuff, so we can kind of have a two-way street here. Who has been involved with security automation or automating instant response and things like that? Okay, all right. Well, this is probably really boring for you guys. Sorry. So what level of maturity of that, if you mind me asking? Huh?
None, the lowest.
The lowest level of maturity.
4 out of 10.
Are you enriching data for analysts to have better time remediation? Or are you in full automation where there are actions being kicked off and off of certain type of data sets with no manual intervention?
Some systems are being automatically kicked off.
Okay.
When you say maturity, are you talking about the 5 levels of maturity, or are you just talking about?
No, I'm not talking about from like the maturity matrix or anything like that. Just general maturity. You know, we're not going to get too much into the frameworks or technical stuff. And, all right. Good discussion there. You guys awake?
We had all the levels of security, but we were also MSSP.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yep, that's at each level.
How many vendors do we have in the room? Do we have any MSPs? There you go. Cool. SIM, security, MS?
MSSP, we're working on it.
Working on it.
In progress.
In progress. Okay, I won't steal any of my information. It was all copyrighted. Not really. So, okay. All right. Do we have, how many government? Do we have local government, state government, federal government? You don't have to say what agency or anything. Okay. Do we have healthcare sector in here? Okay. Do we have what level, what side of the healthcare, if I mind asking?
Insurance.
Insurance. That's interesting. How about education? Education people. All right. Marshall University representing? No? University? Marshall? There you go. There's one in here. All right. Let's see. Any other industry sector? I know I could go through all of them, but
Previously financial.
use financial. Any other financial banks? Cool. Cool stuff. All right. Students. No students? All right. Okay. Professionals. Huh?
Utility.
Utility. Okay. Well, public utility or private utility?
Oh.
Oh, okay. All right. Is it, I know you said federal, is there any state, local government in here? Okay. Are you guys part of, like, the MSISAC? Are you familiar with that? Okay. All right, cool. I'm also co-chair on the disaster recovery business, or the business resiliency work group. So a lot of these 15-minute tabletops are covered inside of our monthly calls. Are also available if anyone wants. They are not. They are open source essentially. All the tabletops. So the tabletops we'll be doing today are kind of modified tabletops. I make them a little more technical. The ones covered usually are more high level. All right. Chatty crowd. Okay, automation. Does anyone have a background on automation? The theory of? Any computer scientists in the room? All right. Any program theory classes? Any nothing?
Did you guys take classes?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Good. All right. So, anyone want to be able to guess what type of automation we'll be mostly talking about here?
Turning?
Hmm?
The turning machine?
Turning machine?
Yeah, it's a big one.
I wish. That would be fun. That'd be... Anyone?
Combinational logic?
Yeah, we'll be focused on combinational logic. Again, basically taking something, if something does this, do this. There are a lot of machine learning algorithms that will do fuzzy logic and things like that. Again, it's combinational logic. When you start getting into the larger portion of automation, you're talking just something that the security industry, I think, is just getting into. Maybe if you have some of the, IBM Watson stuff doing some type of, or dark trace or something like that, you're getting kind of in there, but you're still not at, still a high level of automation. When I say that, I mean automational logic where a lot of stuff is still just using fuzzy machine learning. There's very few things using anything over that. Again, security automation from the combinational logic will be focusing on, again, and taking all of your foundational sections of security and models within. So if you have vulnerability management, you have your security operations of centralized logging, obviously you have your SIM and your alerts, and you have your threat intelligence data, and just marrying all those together to be able to make essentially logical choices, automated logical choices on that to enrich the data and as well as the event data to be able to make better decisions quicker or complete automated decisions. But again, those automated decisions are probably very, very simple. For instance, this comes in, block this IP address. That's great automation. As simple as that is monumental for a security department to get to. Again, I know that there might be the firewalls to do that automatically, but I'm talking about things that have gotten through, right? I'm not talking about just geo blocking or blocking because it's on a malware list or something like this. I'm talking about something that's gotten through and all of a sudden automatically blocking it, or at least making it very easy to block. So one of the largest ROIs, and we'll get into this more and more detail, is, say, phishing emails, right? Phishing emails come in. Are they reported by our users? Phishing emails are blocked. Probably don't really care to look at them as more as the stuff that's gotten through. But how many people have an organization where you can report a phishing email, not simply just forwarding to a mailbox, but an actual button that actually takes the headers, raw headers, and things like that, right? It's pretty basic now. Anyone else know? What has a report to this button?
I've worked with one company that did.
Yeah, so, okay. So, again, there's ways to implement those things. There's a lot of open source utilities to do that. But, getting those things, once you get them in and you train your users to use that, you're getting all kinds of emails reported to you, and probably 80% of those are probably marketing emails that they have on the subscribe list. I mean, do you really need to go and look at those? But how do you know? Maybe it's a spoofed vendor or some type of notification, right? How do you know that if you're all of a sudden getting hundreds of emails reported to you and you only have 2 SOC analysts, right? How many people have more than 5 people on the security department? How many people are the only ones in their security department?
I'm one of 2.
2, okay, 1 and 2, all right. 1 and 2, right? Yeah, so I mean, if you have, and I assume, how many people have over 1,000 users in their organization? Yeah, how about 5,000 users?
Just
Around, okay. So again, when you start getting up to that, and you start getting the, I hope if you have more than 5,000 users, you have more than 2 people in your department, but you might not. But when you start getting, say 0.5%, 1% of your user population daily, reporting phishing emails, so you can get up to the hundreds pretty easily. What's the average you think a SOC analyst spends on a phishing email triage? We're not talking about something that's clear text or something like that, but just if there's a link and it goes
30 minutes.
30 minutes, right? Maybe, right? I mean, you have to switch over. It might take you 5 minutes to do it, but you're doing other things. Things are coming at you. It might be 30 minutes, maybe an hour on something that's a little wacky, right? But I mean, if you get hundreds of those, are you going to look at each one? Right? I mean,
Depends on who got 'em.
it depends who got them, right? Now, when they come in, do you know that person is a high-level VIP or executive or has access to the classic or sensitive data right away? Or you have to look that up in a directory, then you have to kind of look at the job title. Maybe the job title is right after directory, and then you have to kind of, how's that work? Or do you have a list? Just people you know are important.
In a previous life, there was certain employees that I didn't work on the upper management. I don't know. Something weird came in for them. You drop what you were doing, and you figured it out.
Okay. Does anybody have an actual classification of risk per employee? Do you want to kind of explain that, or for the group?
Yeah, so
Okay.
high-profile C-level executives fall into a certain category, and basically anything they touch or have access to gets graded on a scale of 1 to 10 in our environment. And the higher the number, the more sensitive it is.
And where is that? Is that stored in like a classification system, or is that just an active directory? Do you have them in a specific OU, and they're just always there?
Yes. So partially Active Directory, and then we actually have a custom in-house database that stores a bunch of the statistical data.
So when you get into a lot of this stuff, and you're saying, hey, I need to this data enrichment, this, and all of a sudden you start throwing up access databases, and you start you start kind of doing your in-house stuff. Again, if you want to pay for something, you can pay for like something like a Varonis solution or something, or any type of other user behavioral analytics system, right? So you can start putting that metadata in, taking it from Active Directory, knowing what permissions they have access to, what folder structures they have access to, and things like that. Those cost a lot of money, and it's really not. If you have skilled people, it's not that difficult, again, to get that type of information in there. So that's kind of going right into the incident response and triage here. Is that, again, you're trying to limit, as you can see that, you have that dwell time, the containment time, visit attack. I'm not talking about full incident response kind of process, but it's just generally speaking there. How long, you said maybe 30 minutes, right? That's even before the dwell time is there, right? When users report, an email, have they already clicked on it? They kind of click on it and then report it, right? And then when you're talking about regular just events and things like that, how well are your SIMs really tuned? How much data are they really getting? Are they getting a lot of data, or are you just having thousands and thousands of alerts, or no alerts, or not even sure if it's really working? And you're like, oh, maybe would I be able to detect if someone all of a sudden got access to a sensitive security group in Active Directory that wasn't supposed to? Would anyone be able to detect that in this room? Say an administrative assistant got legitimate access to a folder that required a sensitive security group as defined in Microsoft Active Directory. Would that kick off an alert? How would you know if that was a ticket that actually that person is supposed to have? Discussion time. Talk to me.
Well, previous life I did something similar to that, where I had auditing turned on if a user's privileges for some reason were changed. If there was a change to the object, depending on the type of change, I would categorize them as critical, high, medium, low. If it was in the critical or high, I would get an instant text message and email about that.
And how would you know it wasn't a ticket? It wasn't legitimate?
So I'll have to investigate that.
You had to investigate the ticketing system, right?
That is correct.
So, at least from a default privileged accounts and account operators, those kinds of things, those are all alerted immediately.
Correct. Yeah. Okay.
But then, as we move through and identify critical data in a file share, those groups are also being identified and alerted. Okay. How do I associate that to an access ticket? Well, the cybersecurity team actually runs access tickets. It's part of our ticket queue, but in a larger organization.
Right. So some. Please speak.
We use a third-party software that would track access for stuff like that, but only in finance and HR.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So like some places might have like an IAM or IDM system that kind of has that functionality, or if your security operations is inside that ticket workflow, most likely you would. No, that's not legitimate off the top here. Maybe it does enrich your and change your SIM alerting, and all of a sudden that person has legitimate access to this folder. Obviously, I hope if someone like an executive assistant or janitorial staff all of a sudden got like account operators or print operator, I hope that everyone would be alerted. But have you tested that? Right. I'm not saying to go test that, but do you make sure there's an alert that would functionally, kick off, and who would that kick off to?
So when you say alerted, so our access management team pretty much handles the scenario you laid out in front of us. When that happens, though, we do get alerts for incidents like that are questionable, but it's more of a manual process. Like
that's fine. I'm not saying people don't have these things. I'm just trying to get discussion. Okay. I would hope so. You have some type of manual process. Right. Every single thing is manual. That's fine. A lot of places operate like that. I'm not saying that not having automation, you guys are in the Stone Age, but it's really something to think about, because a lot of people don't really go through and see the workflows of how something gets actually reported to remediate it. For instance, in our environment, our security operations does not have the ability to remediate some things like that, because we are not domain administrators. That's the engineering team, a specific team within that that has that type of access. So we have to interoperate with those people. How many people security department are also the domain administrators or have that capability? All right. Okay, a few. Okay. Now, how many people that don't have those are your domain administrators essentially on call and working 24/7? That would respond to a security incident at night. I mean, do they have an on-call list? Yeah, but I mean, are they going to wake up if all of a sudden, you know, how long would it take for that person to wake up and do something, right? So again, identify those gaps, and if that's what you have, you have. But just again, identifying those gaps, going through where does automation make sense and where does it not make sense. Right? Good discussion. Anything else there? Anything anyone want to add?
I know for at least our environment, we tend to automate things that we'll spend a lot of time automating a small piece of the puzzle, but still continue to do the heavy lifting manually. So it's as if there was no benefit to doing the small automation piece. Like we spent 3 hours to save 10 minutes.
But that's 10 minutes over potentially an entire year, right? Every
correct.
time. Right?
I mean, but it's just it seems like it's perpetually thing after thing of that happening.
Right. So if you take something like this and identify that essentially, or that 10-minute or that 1 hour task, you know, you can focus what should you automate, right? At the end of the day, again, you want to limit the dwell time, but you also want to make sure your data is accurate in your workflow. How many people have gotten a ticket and then the information on that user ending has been completely stale or inaccurate, right? And that happens. Is that anything you're going to be able to do about that? Probably not right there in that instance, or even your team might not have the ability, but how can that be automated? How can essentially an employee transfer be automated? If you don't, again, a lot of environments don't have identity management or orchestration kind of doing a lot of that workflow. Formerly, I came from Fortune 500 that had that, and then I went to a small local government that didn't have any of that.
We actually used a pretty basic, our HR system. Exports username, job title, phone number, work location, et cetera, and it gets fed into every AD everything. So we know that as long as they've registered that work change or job change or location change with HR, it's going to get done.
This is exactly what I was looking for someone kind of to say, because that's a lot of places, for some reason, just don't do that. And they have that capability because the HR system might just be this thing that's in the that you know, maybe the HR IT people have access to, but really, a lot of people don't, in the small areas, don't do things like that, and things get stale over time. Especially, and again, I'm talking about small medium business as well as local governments and things like that, because things just change so much over time. It just gets stale, and it's never really a problem until, you know, security looks at it, or there's stale records for something. There's not a lot of things, because payroll might still be going fine, HR social record, but again, Active Directory, does someone really care that you're not a senior in your title, or your phone number changed real quick? Does the phone system really push down to AD and stuff like that? Can you really call? Do you really know where those users are located? Do you have cube numbers? Things like that. Those can help have the accurate data and make the data integrity a lot more viable to, again, do automation. I'm not saying that 99%, 100% of your whole environment has to be accurate to do automation, but it's something you really need to review before you start implementing all these things.
What were you saying you did in the Fortune 500 but not in the other companies?
Oh, I mean, we had large identity management systems that did a lot of orchestration and auto provisioning and deprovisioning with the click of a button. It's just because it was just there, right? And we paid for that. So
I mean, without that kind of automation or without that knowledge, I don't know how you would even track. If somebody moves from HR with access to critical, employee data to finance and suddenly gets finance, now they've got both. If you're not tracking that they left, you're not revoking that access.
Right. I mean, a lot of places, when they do a full Active Directory review, or you sit down, a pen tester or a risk assessment comes in and runs something like Bloodhound. How many people are familiar with Bloodhound? Runs Bloodhound, and there's just stuff everywhere. There's delegation issues. They didn't even know half the things had delegation all the way up to, you know, need a server admin or something like that because someone needed access. Some fiscal department needed access to RDP into a server that had a fat client on it, and then also he has server admin for all the servers, right? I mean, there's just things like that can happen, especially in your low budget environment, low resources, and a large amount of staff, which happens a lot.
So one of the things that we had before we got our new HR system was we had a leave request built in SharePoint.
Mm-hmm.
And so it would look at Active Directory, and if your information wasn't correct, then you couldn't send it to your manager unless your manager was correct, because then it would go to someone else and they would say, you don't work for me, you didn't get your leave. So it was, it came down to the employee saying, I want to take my leave, get my information correct.
That's interesting. That makes it more personal, right?
Yeah. If
so,
you can't take leave, then suddenly you want the system fixed.
Right. Not saying that you should just do that for everyone, but yeah, definitely though. Make it a little more personal.
It was sort of a side effect of having it in that system.
From an MSP and MSSP, what happens when you guys go into an environment and you get hired by and they buy your Blinky boxes and your unicorn tools, and you go into a company or entity and they just don't have any type of data integrity for your Blinky boxes and unicorn systems to work off of? Just what would be interesting? No one knows who you guys are in the audience. They don't know what MSPs are for, but it's just curious.
It becomes best effort delivery then.
Informing them what lack of visibility they'll have.
That is correct.
Now, do you usually, because, if you do a proof of concept, you might know that ahead of time, but, if they think it's going to solve the world, what do you guys also offer? Like, what do you...
Ideally, you tell them beforehand,
Yeah.
if you can get into the sales meeting.
Temper expectations going in.
Okay.
You try to give them a plan for what it is that they need to develop, where they need to go, tell them where they are. And then once they tell you this is how much they want to spend and the service they want to buy, you give best effort delivery.
As anyone that's had MSP services before, or have they come in, claim things, which is fine because it probably does do what they say it does in some aspect, but then realize that it's dependent on a lot of data structures that you just don't have? Anyone? No? Okay. You guys implement good things.
Yes, we do.
Again, going on. All right, so as we discussed, kind of going right into it, again, key things before automation and just generally life. Foundational security practices need to exist. You need an inventory, you need CMDB, you need asset classification. I know a lot of you guys are professionals, a lot of you have incident response, automation, even experience. This is kind of not new to you. But again, asset classification, to be able to develop those workflows and the data classification. Do you guys have, for asset classification, do you guys just put that right in your CMDB? Do you have a separate system? What are you guys doing?
Combination of both.
Combination of both? Anyone else? I want to start calling other people now. We got our gold star people here.
We're growing our help desk system.
Help desk system? Okay. The CMDB or some form that's attached to it. How many people's help desk system or ticketing system connects directly with their security operations or SIM or anything like that for enrichment data? No? The MSSP, of course, theirs does.
Well, we can drive it, depending on what the customer has, we
Yeah.
can data mine some information.
Data mine, okay. How many people do a CSV dump of the CMDB from your ticketing system and at least just have it queryable by your security systems or inject it in there? Anyone? No?
Kind of.
Kind of?
We pull certain data.
It's a similar thing to the HR database thing, right? For employee data going into AD. Why wouldn't you think it would be very similar to do it into some of your events and event enrichment and things like that? I'm not saying the whole database needs to be put in your SIM, but when you get an alert from a system, maybe your DHCP scope and reverse lookups work, or maybe, but then do you know exactly who that person's attached to, who owns that asset from your SIM?
I mean, not to pull out of the description here, but we get a lot of that information from the Hive. We tied
From the Hive?
Yeah, we tied the Hive to our DNS.
Look at that. Anyone have a guess what tool we're going to pick here soon? So you have a large Hive instance then?
We're still building.
Huh?
That was your plan.
I planted it in there. I actually know
No,
him.
we're actually pretty fresh with it. We're
Okay.
just still building, modules onto it, and we're linking it wherever we can. So that it's
If I had a cookie, I'd give it out. So yeah, that's very. So it's exactly what I'm leaning towards, right? But a lot of people don't have those type of security orchestration and management systems because to buy something like that equivalently is very expensive. It's something that you'd have to additionally budget for, and I assume that everyone in the past 5 years has already just got budgeted for their Splunk instance or their login instance or their vulnerability management instance or their staffing instance, right? How do you go back and say, hey, now I need this whole other piece just to connect everything? Like, now how do you make that that whole kind of story to the executives to get on board with that, right? How do you do that? How do you tell that story, right? Anyone else do anything like that? You said kinda.
Yeah, I don't. So the other guy on our team mainly handles. He came from system administration. He handles more of the data going here and there, and I handle the incident response, things like that.
Okay. Anyone else have an IT ticketing system? I'm going to start with some basic questions here to get people involved. Yeah. Have a ticketing system?
Homegrown.
Yeah.
Homegrown, okay. Is it feeding into your security? Some of you guys, no, nothing. So if you got an alert from something and you had to know the owner and everything, how long would that take you guys to know exactly what even that asset is before you can triage it?
20 minutes.
20 minutes? Okay. Right, and that sounds like, 20 minutes isn't a bad time, but imagine you get like 30 alerts, right? At least. And again, that's an at least thing, right? That 20 minutes really gets, very frustrating, very fast. Because again, all you're doing is logging into another system and essentially querying another database that is all probably just a text files anyway, or some form, right? It's just, again, all that data can easily be mapped into your other systems at this point. All right, so I've beaten that down. Again, open source, if you can support it. A lot of things I'm going to be talking about here are open source. One gentleman already mentioned the Hive. Again, how many people have an IPAM? Working on one. IPAM.
Just paid for one.
Paid for one. SolarWinds?
No.
I thought you said you had a paper one.
Oh no, I'm paying.
Those are the best. Those are the best. Paid for one. Just
paying for one.
giant room of just all the assets. You're like, which one is it?
Yeah, it's very secure. No one.
If you have one analyst in the middle, it just has a rotating thing, and you just
They're all
looks
sticky
around.
notes.
All sticky notes just everywhere, a scrum board of your assets.
Just need armed guards at the doors. It's
Yeah.
the most secure.
There you go.
We
So that's,
did that when we did DHCP out.
Deep security.
You got to, now I was like, oh, wow, okay. Nice. So,
And
killing me.
I'll throw out the PHP IPAM is an awesome solution.
Did you read my description?
No, I didn't
now,
actually.
man? Huh?
I didn't realize you were going into that.
Jeez, all right, you gotta leave. You just gotta leave. You got the cookie now. You're just.
You should play
I don't know if you're trolling me or if you're just.
We sent them your slides yesterday.
That's what I was like. You're like, what's going on? We're gonna be best friends. So again, having an IPAM. How many people have Microsoft Active Directory? How many is that attached to some type of enterprise EA in some form?
Yes.
I would hope so if you're a business. I mean, even if it's the lowest enterprise agreement. Microsoft has an IPAM in that, right? you have to set it up, but it is in there again through doing DHCP. You can do IPAM. You can do a lot of things. A lot of people don't really realize that, and it can do things other than Microsoft assets. How many people know that they can import and then also manage Linux systems in a subset, pretty much, from Microsoft, like SCCM and Microsoft IPAM?
Through SCCM, I knew that.
Yeah. How many people did not know that and are kind of surprised about that? No? That's killing me here. So it's mind-blowing. All right, not really mind-blowing. But again, it's about reviewing what you systems have and what their actual capabilities are. Again, a lot of these systems you can get for free from something. Again, I'm not suggesting to go and replace your entire environment with open source or just take anything off of GitHub. Definitely review. We've, especially not MSPs.
Hey.
I thought we were going to get more on there for a minute.
I know. So a lot of these things can be put in there, but again, review them. We've gotten to a stack of open source products where I work at, but it has taken a time. We've had a lot of battles there, a lot of war stories and things like that. We've rebuilt things multiple times. Things like PHP IPAM are something to look at. There are other ones out there too, as well, that people use just as well. I can't name off. I think there's one of the people just left, so I was gonna have her share some. But there are a lot of things out there. Again, looking at how many people actually do that have small environments and map their environment and do like NDiffs? They actually do diffs of the nmaps. Raise your hands. Yes, I see nods. Do you just load up the ndiff and you review it every?
I just started using that the last couple of months or so.
How many people have vulnerability? Some type of scanning engine. What happens when it scans and there's something new on your network? What happens?
So we use Nessus Professional, and they recently did away with the APIs. So I wrote a custom tool that uses the APIs to scan data back, and then it throws it into a custom tracker, and it compares it each week to the new scans. If it's not there anymore, it marks it as closed. If it's new or reopened, stuff like that.
Okay.
And
where does that run from? That runs from a server, or that runs from like your machine, like your desktop?
Server. We have an internal and an external scanner.
So okay.
Multiple locations.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, that's fine. That's again, it's very creative design, right? And that's what a lot of people are finding out, is that they're going through, and some of your products, again, being Nessus Professional, that makes sense too. But if you had like, I know some of these products, like it will give you an ndiff, it will give you a diff, but like, what do you do from that? I'm really gonna dig into you guys responding here and sharing some stuff if you feel comfortable.
Just to touch on, you were talking about the emails being malicious, and one thing in the button. So one thing we did, we wrote the custom macro that we deployed in our environment to send those headers, and it also forwarded a copy to a monitored mailbox. And then we wrote an app that goes through that email and pulls out links, does DNS lookups on it. Once it has the IPs and everything, it then feeds them to Google State Browser API, Cisco Umbrella, and a couple other API services that we pay for to kind of generate a report.
Is that all custom?
Yeah.
You need to talk to the Hive guy. That's what. But that's good though.
It's very convoluted. I mean, I'm the only guy coding it right now.
No, and that's
small, what 3,500 plus environment, person environment. So it's work in progress, but it's working.
No, definitely. So again, workflow orchestration. Again, you can have scripts, workflow engines, platforms, all kinds of things like that. We're going to be, again, it comes down to, as some of you guys answering stuff here, skilled staffing with passion. Again, skilled staffing with passion is worth more than any product out there. and it's the best thing that I think security operations environment and department can have. Again, you need that skilled staffing. Not everyone has to be a developer, but I'm telling you, if you have people with, I won't even say development skills, but curiosity skills with intelligence, go a long way. If you start really developing a lot of code base, we have even implemented our own Git repository internally that can do code versioning and a lot of things. So a lot of our engineers are even doing large PowerShell scripting and things like that, where you can start sharing information and even get code reviews. We haven't gotten, even if you have developers on staff, they might be able to help at least review the code of some of the engineering scripts and things that a lot of the security operators are starting to build. Because a lot of development is starting to happen, customization, doing custom APIs, and a lot of the other places of the environment and operations and business don't really operate like security does, at least at this time. Obviously development does, right? They're going towards the DevOps models and things like that. But how many infrastructure guys, you know, I mean, they might be running scripts and stuff, but playing with APIs and stuff, my experience is that security is kind of the people that are looking into make sure all the APIs are connected. What's the ability of this product? We got this product that we paid X amount for. It has all these capabilities, all these APIs, but you have to develop them, you have to connect them, you have to set the alerts up. So I did have slated a break right here, but I think I'm just going to keep going unless anyone wants to walk out. I think we're all adults here, right? Yeah? No children?
Debatable.
Debatable? All right, cool. Tool time on a budget here. We're going to get into some of the tools a little more in depth again. I wish this was a little hands-on shop. Maybe next year. I think we talked about developing a lot of stuff. The Hive and running even an entire Hive and instance inside the CTF. And doing a lot of enrichment, a lot of observables and things like that. Again, I'm going to start. I'm not expecting you to read some of this stuff here, but again, if you have even the smallest environment can do these things. A one-man IT shop can go online, get some Nmap stuff. Nmap's your friend. You can write it Nmap NDiff, and you can have these batched and you can have them run. And if you have a large environment, start with a specific subnet. Hopefully you have some type of subnetting structure, and start with something. Okay. So hopefully you have just target small. If you know your HR team or your law department or your some type of critical team is very sensitive, start running NDiffs on those assets or that asset wherever that is on the network and making sure nothing else is popping up.
Before we all take photos of that screen, is there a way to get a copy of this?
All these slides will be there. I just like people taking pictures of me.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah, so all these will be distributed. I'll have slide notes as well. So there's a lot of supporting. So you don't have to that's a picture, right? I'll let you know the real code and stuff like that. Again. I'll have a lot of links for training OVA or training VMs and things like that you can get for all the products and stuff that we talk about here, so you can kind of play with your own environment. Hope the next time I have this workshop to have all those training environments up and running and a bunch of test accounts so people can actually start logging in, looking at some inventory classification systems, tying it to logging and lookup tables, and then enriching the data through like a security operations and management system. And that's really where you start to get it. It seems like a lot of work at first, but once you get it, you really can't live without it. So next one here is, again, scanning Smb shares. How many people are familiar with Smb? Okay. All right. How many people are familiar with the versions of Smb? What is your favorite version of Smb?
His favorite as well.
No version of Smb. Yeah, so how many people have Smb v1 that they are trying to decommission? It's there. I know it's there. Are you tracking it? What? Just explain some of your, if you can. I know this is a little sensitive stuff. We're talking about security things. We're interested in we're all friends here.
Except it's recorded, will be on the internet.
And those people are assholes.
Yes, they are.
Imagine how good you're doing letting people know that everyone has problems and we're all talking them through.
Our environment.
And shout out your company name when you
real
speak.
loud.
No, so our company been around for quite a while. At several points of its existence in the Wild West when it came to purchasing hardware or software, and
bring on that P card.
The overall company would basically find smaller companies and then buy them and say, "You're part of us now." We put our name in their office and then walk away and don't talk to them for years, basically. So now we're kind of trying to bring everybody under the umbrella again, and we're finding things that shouldn't really be there.
Right. Right. Some rogue IT going on there, right?
Shadow IT.
Yeah. I like rogues. D&D guy. So.
I would just like to point out that we just ripped the Band-Aid off, shut off SMB1, and it broke two things in our environment. One of them was a security appliance that was still running open source SMB code from the 90s.
You hear that? MSPs in the room? Nice. Okay. What was the other thing? Printers?
They were both networking gear.
Yeah.
One was a security gear, one was.
Anyone else have any war stories with SMBV1? Copiers, yeah, those are quite the beasts. Everything, MSP. Do you guys monitor for SMBV1? Yeah.
Depends on the customer.
Yeah, there you go.
Depends on customers. Some customers don't care about SMB.
Some customers don't care about a lot.
You can pan tilt that over. Okay, yeah, so again, a lot of things, again, these are two examples for Nmap. There's a lot of Nmap scripts. I'm sure that, how many people are very familiar with Nmap? Right? Now, how many people have really messed around with the N scripts and things like that, and SC scripts and things like that?
I'm sorry?
Do you have success with those?
I'm happy to pasted them before.
Yeah, I can copy and paste them, and I can tell if I get like valuable information back. Usually, I get told by the infrastructure guys that my Nmap scans are shutting off VMs.
Now we're getting into it.
Yeah.
Everyone's awake. We're shutting down infrastructure.
Yeah.
That's because it was insecure.
Yeah, exactly.
We blue screened our phone server.
Blue screen the phone server. Any other war stories on Nmap?
How many calls you get about that?
Not bad.
No. No raised hands. Okay. All right. So yeah. So definitely, I recommend. The scripts are a little interesting, but again, understanding some of this stuff, getting maybe partnering with somebody. If you have someone in the infrastructure team that does like Bash or any type of awk or any type of other Python development, if you have those people, your capabilities, have a lunch and learn with them, connect with them. Take just literally an Nmap class. Find an Nmap class, take it. There's a lot of capabilities you can do when you can customize things. A lot of the code you'll find on Nmap is usable, but then again, it has to be configurable for your environment. You need to know kind of what it's doing. You don't want to shut off network infrastructure. It probably will happen. Go against a test environment, but definitely. Even the smallest shop can run Nmap, do some diffs, at least even just a basic scan and a diff, and you can get a lot of useful information. You'll be surprised what you find on your network, if that's anything from, IoT cameras that, people set up in their offices or screens to all kinds of crazy things. You'll find them there, and then that's stuff that you really want to get off your network. Some people might not even realize it's on the network, like themselves. They're just like, oh, I plugged it in, it start working, so I started using it so I could use my Alexa at work. So.
So you can change the music at home. While
Exactly.
Working.
Exactly. So again, I'm going to beat it down. Important things after the basics is again inventory classification processes. Again, consider centralized logging. How many people have centralized logging? Centralized logging. Okay. What does that mean to you guys? To you? Now I'm not saying you're going to
All our logs are in one place.
That's fine.
That's all that matters.
That's all that matters. Okay. Does that go to? I'm just gonna play devil's advocate here. Do you have like a specific NTP server? Is everything on a specific NTP server for UTC? So all those, or not UTC, but any type of maybe ours is UTC. But
We leverage a cloud solution for all our logging.
just put it in the cloud.
Yeah, just throw it in the cloud.
Oh, it's working
Storage
perfect
is cheap.
Okay, so it gets cloud time.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Answer done. Okay. Well, centralized logging. How's that working out? Huh?
It's there.
It's there. All right.
It's great, but the volume of data is really hard.
Right, the ability to interpret what you get is the issue.
Okay. All right.
So in our environment, we have centralized the logging, but for the years and years of things we've just done improperly, we're in that it hasn't really been storing everything that we were told that it was storing. So we're going through now, and I guess the cause is the amount of data. I mean that's always an issue.
Okay.
So I'm helping to write the processes to dedupe a lot of the data.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Definitely. What else? Centralized logging? Not really. Kinda. Using the Hive for that too.
No, it's just a lot of data. We tried to go back against it, and often.
Are you using an open source solution for centralized logging? Okay, I was wondering. Okay, good. You didn't see my slide. That's verification.
We skipped that slide.
I guess so.
You didn't pay him enough.
No.
I guess not. So yeah, storage is a huge thing. If you have centralized logging, any of those centralized logging components, open source?
yeah, for a lot of the custom stuff that I've been doing, I leverage the Elk Stack.
Elk Stack. Okay, so it's full. Yeah, so you're anything specific. I would say build of the Elk Stack, like something like or is it just full straight Elk? Straight Elk, okay. There's some combinations of Elk Stack out there that kind of have things built on top of it that ingest data a little bit.
We have so we still use Kibana, but I also have a custom front end that I've been working on.
Mm-hmm.
But
okay, is that also then essentially Azure SIM too, or
no,
you guys have a separate SIM that things are going towards? Curious.
We have a separate tool that can be used as a SIM, but it's not really used for that.
Okay.
Kind of. It's a mix. It's.
Anyone have an open source SIM here? Has anyone ever heard of a product called SIM Monster? You looked at that? It's interesting. we're not going to go over that, but I'm just trying to throw people off there. But it is another product to look at, though, as we're talking through it. Again, data enrichment, event enrichment, again, accuracy and completeness of data is essential to not even just automation, but instant response, especially if something really happens. And you don't want to go to one of your executives, your CTO, your CIO, or something and be like, yeah, you know, we just didn't know what this asset was. Because I can guarantee you they assume they know where machines are at and what they're doing, who they assigned to. You know, I've been in places where people leave the company and all of a sudden that department just hoards their machines because they know how long it takes IT to get a machine out there and they're just sitting there, and they're just used, and then they're given, and IT's like, oh, we never had requests for a laptop. So, oh yeah, we already have one. They're like, what? And that could be like 4 or 5 months down the road, right? So.
Oh, so to kind of give some funny insight, because
insight. Let's go. Let's hear it.
I'm all
it's a
about
workshop. We're working here.
I'm all about keeping the laptops in at the company, but recent policies in the past couple of years at our company, C-level gets to keep their machines in the lead.
That is very interesting.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Now they have to be wiped. Like there's a whole process. So they've.
C-level employees get to keep their laptops.
Oh yeah. It's
Let's say that for
of course, there's been pushback. I mean, it's a huge mess. So what
I didn't think it could get worse.
So what I have implemented to basically make it acceptable is every laptop that we've had to let C-level keep, they're completely okay with it being wiped and reinstall it. And I said, okay, well, if you're okay for it to be wiped, then you're okay for me to replace the hard drive and give you a brand new machine, basically. Mm-hmm. Because I would feel more comfortable knowing that you
just give a machine and then repurposing that internally.
Yeah, well, basically.
I'd rather go to the store and buy a new machine.
They keep the laptop, but we replace the hard drive.
Oh, okay.
So and then we destroy the hard drive because I don't feel comfortable letting it go.
Oh, interesting.
But and then certain so that depending what C-level exec has left, because we've had a bunch of flip-flopping and things change.
Sounds like a fun environment.
It's so much fun. I can't contain it sometimes. Depending what C-level leaves or the directors that are under them, sometimes we've had directors actually get to keep their laptops. Mm-hmm. And my boss goes to battle and basically says, hey, this is against the policy, and basically gives people that are like, guess what, we approve these things. So.
You use LoJack or like Absolute Software or anything to track laptops? That would be fun.
So, yeah.
This is more getting back to the automation. So we talk about, because we have the same thing. Somebody throws a laptop in the drawer, pulls it out 2 months later. It's like, oh yeah, here we go. We actually have, we run automation against our AD. If the computer hasn't logged in 2 months, it's kicked out of the domain.
It's out, yeah.
If the user hasn't logged in 3 months, their user is disabled. You might have field workers or users that never log in. You don't log in, you're disabled.
Now, do you have exceptions for that?
No. Well, service.
Right? Yeah, right.
But we don't have exceptions in the organization. Mm-hmm. We actually have higher stringencies on consultants and vendors.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So again, if you guys, how many people automatically terminate a user account 80 that has not been used or logged in automatically? That's a pretty
terminate or disable.
Disable. Right. It's a basic process. Right. It might be maybe not automated but batched, or you have someone run it so weekly. How many people do that for the actual machine objects? Right, as you mentioned.
So we've actually had an issue with that.
You need to give a presentation, right?
Sorry if I talk too much.
No, this is what I want. I want a discussion.
We have had a federal division, and some of the techs were, in questionable areas, third world countries, on bases and such, and they wouldn't be able to connect online for 60 plus days sometimes. So finally when they get back online, and I'm like, hey, you gotta call us, and we would have to walk them through a process, and I'm like, there's always pushback to try to bend the rules, like, well, we need to create exceptions for this, and I'm like, first off, you're in an area where if your laptop gets stolen, it's not gonna be a good thing. And so yeah, it's
it's definitely a lot of war stories with machine object, disabling machine objects. I know we have a lot of emergency operations that are used in certain instances that might only be used once a year, annually, certain things. You need to really make sure that you know your organization's procedures and policies, and how, if you have redundant or DR equipment, things like that, that you are aware of those things, and things like that, as well as your if you do have a desktop support team and things like that, that they're also aware of those procedures and processes once you put them in place. And that's just a war story we had with doing the same thing way back when. They were sitting laptops, staging them, and then just sitting them there when people would go, would leave the company, and then all of a sudden they would go to try to re-image them or put them back on the network, and they would be disabled. And it was just a process where they didn't have the rights and things like that to join it back or renew the machine account, things like that. And it just created a operational inefficiency right there that was overcomable. But again, you talk about all of a sudden you got an influx of 30 employees that got hired, and you need to add these machines back on that. You can get into a kind of a cluster there. Anyways, good stuff. I'm going to go through some of these tools. Again, if this looks familiar to some of the people. How many people have looked at PHP My IPAM? Or an IPAM, one person? Okay, so I'm not going to go into the IPAM. This is just one. There's a lot of things inside the IPAM. Again, this is some of the things, an example of what it inventories. And you can have more. You can have a lot of extensions on it. You can do a lot of customization on it. Again, it is open source. Again, you have something like you have a number of subnets. This isn't just one of these things in our example of in our network. Again, over 1,200. You got the VLANs there. IPv4 addresses, and those are only things that are actually specifically scanned. You can choose to scan and not scan things. We're not scanning IPv6. How many people track IPv6 inside their network? Internal. Disable it.
That's how you track it, you turn it off.
Okay. How do you guys, what do you disable it on? Just on the switches?
Switches, routers, workstations.
Workstations too? Disable?
We don't disable it.
Don't, have it, right? Okay, interesting. Yeah, so if you do disabling IPv6 on your network stack, you might still have it in your network. IPv6 also does something really fun for security people. Anyone want to know what IPv6 does? Interestingly, in the network world?
I think I know.
I can't remember. Anyone?
Public address.
It's a public address. What does that mean?
It's routable.
It's routable. So it ignores a lot of configuration that exists. If you have an IPv6 address, it is routable. It's obtainable, right? It will ignore certain normal restrictions and security policies inside of networking gear because you probably only have it set for IPv6 or IPv4. So it's something very interesting to scan for when you are doing some of your passive scanning or analysis. If you're getting type of Windows event logs or any type of system event logs, really understand IPv6 traffic. Another kind of war story shares that you'll notice that even if you do have it disabled at your network layer, your workstations might still be communicating directly to other devices that have it turned on. So you said you disable the workstations, you disable all the printers, right? So that's something to be conscious of as a disable from the printers. And the interesting thing about printers is that unless you have some vendors, some large print vendors don't have print management. Like you can't just push out unless you have a separate tool set settings of the printers. I don't know if anyone has things that they can share about how they manage their print infrastructure. Some of the best things I've seen is just through SNMP. But that is also, manually set up unless you have some vendors that have print management operations built into all their printers. Just blows my mind. And if I'm incorrect and someone has some type of large vendor that has print management, unless it's one specific one that I know of, I'd be very surprised with some of the other.
We have feet on the ground, they go around.
Yep, a lot of people, yeah.
Previously, there was a lot of issues with Microsoft operating systems when you moved IPv6. So, like, if you search the knowledge base, there's a ton of issues with just removing it. So I think a lot of people were scared to do that.
Yeah.
I think they put out a registry fix or something to that effect for that. Because you can turn it off and it didn't really turn it off. That's a good break.
For the IPAM people in the room, are you guys recording on printers in IPAM? How many people's printers have static or reserved IPs, or are they all just TCP? So you could just literally load it into IPAM. Very interesting thing. How many people know that they change the default passwords on the print management because every printer has one by default turned on?
Our scanners have the credentials set, so it tries to log in and log us down.
Fun stuff. You can put SSO on it. You can just you can go on. Whole fun thing with printers. Printers have a lot of functionality.
When you scan them properly, they will print page after page after page.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Yeah. So again, going down the IPv6 number of kind of going through locations. Again, you get a lot of locations in there. You could have racks. How many people have rack diagrams somewhere, like of their data closets or their right? Are those just in Visio or in Excel? Visio. Yeah. Right? Wouldn't that be nice to be able to see in an IPAM or an inventory management system when you're doing to know exactly where data closet, where it's located at and things? Are the locations at least in the CMDB maybe? Maybe? No?
Yeah. Ours were because of SNP. We would pull out those.
SNP. Okay, cool. All right, so I'm going to go through a little more of the PHP IPAM. This is an example. Some of this is custom to us. You can add custom fields pretty easy too, and this is just an example. So again, you have IP address, which is usually obtained by DHCP, some form, right? So as long as the item's pingable, it will also show you. This is just an example of one IP address. There are entire subnets you can view and things like that. And you guys can, if you literally Google PHP IPAM, that's what it's called. Obviously built on PHP, but the name of it is PHP IPAM. Again, you can put devices, locations. Those are all drop downs. Put nodes, tags. Some of the things that we put in is vendor name, hardware. A lot of those are custom fields. POS that we track for PCI, our POS systems, things like that. DNS, extra DNS names. Some things have extra more, a lot more DNS names than just one if it's a large environment or a specific like VM infrastructure or things like that. We try to just denote those things, what's running on them and things like that. And those are all like comma delimited fields and things like that. We also have Firewall. There's more on this, but this is what I wanted to screenshot. Again, we have device type and things like that, so you can easily see all the cameras on your network and things like that without actually having to scan the network for cameras. A lot of vulnerability management systems or scanners will do this for you as well, like obviously device type and things like that. Again, everything costs a license, right? So again, if something is like a camera or printer, some type of non-workstation device, it most likely has a static or reserved IP. Right? Or at least a reserved subnet of things that is DHCP scope, right? So at least you would know that all these things on this subnet are most likely X device or something like that. Does anybody have something similar? I know you said you had a PHP IPAM. This is kind of starting into some of the automation stuff because this is what you have to be able to automate some things.
No, but you've kind of piqued my interest because we have separate products. We've got the IPAM that we utilize, but we also have a kind of a network scanner that pulls all of the devices back, not a prison, but we pull all the device information, vendors, those kinds of things. The hardest part we have is getting the stuff that I can't do automated. Right? So, who really owns it? Where's it located? Who's it? Those are all difficult things to get into those kinds of.
So I'll give you a use case in automation here. So we're just like talking about random tools and security operations. But okay, imagine you have the Nmap, right? You have the Nmap diff. It runs, say, nightly, right? It can PHP IPAM, for example, has the ability to import just via CSV, and all these are just headers in the CSV, and it literally can just import large amount, and it can overwrite. All it needs, usually the unique field is this IP address. And you can change those unique fields, so that's what it's tagging against. When you import something into it, it will overwrite the fields that you want to overwrite, or by default, it just does it by IP address. So if you have an NDiff come in, you can export the CSV file, make sure that the headers match, and then you can actually import or know that when data, if you can actually do logic where, okay, this is a new device on a network. I know it's a new device. Was it implemented in PHP IPAM with, like, say it was vendor name or agency user, agency owner? Are those things still null or not? And then you can kind of start getting reports like that, and just knowing that, so you can actually make sure that people are actually putting things in. Or, you know what, is the criticality level not there? And you can run reports directly in PHP IPAM as well as how many assets don't have a criticality level and things like that. And there's a lot to overcome when you first do this because nothing has that, right? Or maybe you have another tool that you can import it in, right? But if you don't have that after that you start doing that, it becomes very easy to automate. And that's not automating the full process, but again, it's kind of putting a task list there to be able to make sure that you have your accurate and useful data there. Does that make sense? Is that fine? Is that
Yeah, and then it actually ties back to your centralized logging idea.
It does.
You're logging everything. Well, if all your data is coming back to IPAM and you're either comparing it manually via a report or you're automating that compare and saying, here's where you're missing.
So once you have stuff like this in place, there are APIs for usually all IPAMs, including PHP IPAM. You can actually put into your centralized logging. We use an open source solution, and we can actually create lookup tables. So when an IP address comes into the centralized logging, we can actually enrich all of this data and tie it to it. So then our centralized logging has all of this data accessible, just because it knows the IP address and it can pull that, right? So then you know that, okay, this subnet is this, owned by this agency, it's this machine, all that kind of stuff. Especially if you might be in an environment, and this is maybe more unique to us, where we don't have control over some of the sub-agencies under us. They might have their own IT departments, but we'll see the DHCP scope, but some of the stuff we won't have. So it's very interesting once you get to a, say, multi-tenant or environment, maybe where a company has a lot of subsidiaries, or where you still monitor some of their assets, but only have access to a certain amount of data. Okay, now I'm going to get into, and I don't expect people to read this specifically, but it's just to get the idea of how things work. We use a open source solution called Graylog for our centralized logging. Are people familiar with Graylog? Okay, all right. There's a learning curve to get it set up depending on how large your environment is, but this is our just general architecture of that. Just to kind of go, if you go through this, it's actually built off Elasticsearch. So these are the Elasticsearch databases here with multiple shards each. And then you have the Graylog essentially interfaces. And then we have something that's called HA proxies in front of it. And then these are all the specific log instances that are coming in right here. And it's going through some normalization process right here. So these, all things right here are things like Cisco firewalls here, but then Cisco routers and switches have a different one. Because essentially each ingest probably contains a different parser to parse that, right? So you're normalizing all your data as it comes through here.
So are you using HA proxy to load balance?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so we get so many events to certain types of systems that we actually have to use HA proxy to make sure that the intricacies of the product does not break.
So I use HA proxy, but not so much to load balance, more as a
reporting mechanism in health.
not so much that, more of a failover type thing.
Yeah, that would be for redundant. I mean, yes, yeah,
redundancy rather than load balancing.
Yeah, so I guess it's probably we're technically calling the same thing.
Right.
Because sometimes we found out in the environment that we have, because we're getting like probably thousands of messages per second. We burst up to 20,000 messages per second, events per second that we get in. We found that sometimes it just times out because it's just how it works. And we're honestly still through, again, our operational enhancements and learning curves and things like that, because the first instance we did not have HA proxy in place, but we had to scale. There's white papers out there and stuff about specifically Graylog of how to make it more, I would say, enterprise and failover capable. That's one of the suggestions there, and it's not I would say it's customized, but there are instructions and installations on how to do that for high availability. So yeah, and then some of these are just different ingesters. So one of these is a WEF server. How many people are familiar with WEC and WEF in Windows Event Forwarding and Collection? How many people have Windows Event Forwarding and Collection working in their environment? To a centralized WEF server?
I didn't set up, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Before I came in.
Okay. How many people are familiar with it? So you guys have it set up?
No, we
Similar,
utilize a collection agent, not Windows sending. We go out.
Okay. Yeah. So for everyone, just be aware of the overall architecture and capabilities of Windows. Is that and there's a great Microsoft Ignite, I think maybe 2 years ago, could be maybe 3 years ago, by somebody the name of Jessica Payne. And she actually demoed and set up an entire Windows Event Collection instance and Windows Event Forwarding literally within like 15-20 minutes on stage. And before that, kind of explained it. And it's very, obviously in the demo environment, very easy to set up. Again, you're enabling Windows Event Forwarding. You have a Windows Collection server. You're pointing to it. You have GPOs that push out, and you're getting events, right? And you have to have the Windows Event Collection server has to have certain types of subscriptions and things like that to be able to get them. And there's a whole setup. And I recommend researching that and seeing that, because, again, that's a lot of data that is better than that you could get, and you could analyze better than you might have an agent right now running on your machines, or you might just not be able to getting Windows Event Logs. You can do a lot of things with Windows Event Logs, even if it's just your domain controllers at first. So you can at least get logons and all kinds of other types of domain controller activity from that. It's very useful. So we have that. We collect everything under the sun. So that's every Windows Event Firewall. We have a whole subscription for Windows events that we get, and we monitor those and have alerting and things set up like that. And there's a lot of cool stuff that you can set up with that. There's also, I'll have it in my notes afterwards, it's a great talk that was at DerbyCon that did statistical analysis and essentially triaging of the most common attack vectors and capabilities pen testers use, and just essentially doing logic between, I think, 12 different Windows Event IDs and being able to detect everything under the sun, including basic Mimikatz, basic credential theft, remote desktop anomalies, and things like that. Now, if you start to get an obfuscation and things like that, obviously it might not be as useful, but again, a lot of basic stuff you can get from just 12 Windows Event IDs. I'm sure the MSPs know that because they don't have to do logic between like 15 different Windows Event IDs, and they're good to go. No? Am I wrong or am I right?
It sounded like a jab.
Am I wrong or am I right? But is it though? I mean, right? Similar, or correct me if I'm... There's other things.
Somewhat accurate.
It's somewhat accurate, yeah.
Can you forward on? Can you forward on to other devices,
Correct. So we have our WEF server that then forwards to our centralized login.
Actually, I meant from your centralized login.
Yes, you can. So it depends on your product. So you're talking about forwarding to a SIM. So depending on your SIM, some do recommend that you actually forward from the WEF server directly. And I know that we're trying to get to the point where we're forwarding on, and then everything's actually coming from our centralized logging to whatever SIM alerting, because our centralized logging can do a lot of alerting, but it's not going to do correlation. We might be able to build it in there, but again, that's what our SIM's doing. We don't want to take it away. It's not replacing our SIM, but it's giving our SIM better information, and it's giving our SIM normalized data to be able to do the things it does better, right? But a lot of places do recommend that they get the data directly from the web servers themselves, just because of how the data is formatted. So you actually do have, it's not depicted on this, but you'll have a collector agent or some type of you have to normalize the Windows event format to whatever you're filling it in. A lot of SIM vendors that you would pay for have that correlation or that I would say parsing built into their product, and it's been developed and it's very extensive. Others, you have to at least have some type of transporter for that. We use something called NXLog, and it actually sends it into Graylog event format, so it actually can translate Windows event format to the Graylog extended format and things like that. And that's when you get into the really nitty-gritty of the development and architecture of that. Something like HP ArcSight or something, or Splunk, they all have their ways to be able to just read the Windows event data because they've developed those parsers and engines like that. Anyone have any war stories around that? No?
Oh, go ahead.
I was just
for
into
kind of
resource
problem.
log.
Oh,
Yeah, we've tried to transcend a Graylog a couple different times, and every time we just keep throwing resources at it until it's like, yeah, it's just not. I've tried and repurposed maybe like a VM host or something along those lines to try and proof of concept it to where we could get it working, but it seems like the resources are never enough for Graylog.
How much resources have you, how many events per second are you trying to get, messages per second?
Literally the farthest we've got is we've got it stood up and we've had our syslog one of our systems pointing to it, and it's just so slow, it's literally useless. At this point, it's been so many months ago, it's the last try. It was in the thousands.
It was in the thousands. Once you start getting in the thousands, it's not going to take. You're going to have a multi-tiered architecture to take that on. It's going to have the same. We had the same similar issues.
That's what I run into as well.
And that's going to be honestly true with any type of centralized logging system. It's like if you have a Splunk or anything similar, something like that, it's just going to take resources. Now, obviously, things like Splunk. They might not be as many architectural layers like this, but it might actually be like that, just you might not be aware of because it's going to be a appliance box or in the cloud or something like that. So, but yeah, there's definitely a learning curve in the architecture. And I recommend if you're going into the thousands, again, to look at the HA proxy installation, documentation stuff through Graylog, and you'll have a lot better experience. But it is a learning curve, and it's stuff you gotta go through. We went through about 3 or 4 different environments before we got one that was usable to start using company-wide.
Also, the caveat with I don't know if it's been changed, but I know with Elasticsearch throwing more than 32 gigs of RAM, or no, 32 gigs of memory at it, where it starts to have issues, and you get. I went to an Elasticsearch LSAC training in New York, and one of the developers was telling us that basically you would want to run 2 instances. If you're going to give it that much memory, you need to run 2 instances. Like don't give them more than 32 gigs of memory.
And that's why we've learned similar things. I can't speak on the specifics to cover my specific staffing on that, but I know that was an issue in some forms. It was memory, it was something else, and that's why we actually set up those 6 servers are at a count right there, and they're not like all running 32 gigs. They're all running only 16 gigs. They're not actually that powerful, but just having separate instances went very far in the stability of the environment, and that's just a learning curve of the entire, using something like Elasticsearch. And we have our, you get to a point where you might have some of the DBA developers asking you how you're using Elasticsearch, because you might be the first people using that more than the rest of the whole development team or the IT team and stuff like that. On the private side of some of the stuff I do, that's what we find.
I hate it, to be honest with you. I really hate it. But I mean, it does its job well for us. It does.
Yep. You can quickly search a lot of stuff.
Yes, I just hate it.
All right, I'm going to go in some of our specific dashboards in Graylog just to show you some of the things. I wish this was a little because it's a lot clearer online, but I guess. Anyway, sorry about that. So you can actually read some of that stuff, but I'll go through it. Again, this is our AD overview. This is a sorry, let's see. There are a lot of templates that Graylog has for dashboarding. We took one and modified it. Again, it's very easy to create dashboards. The back end of these dashboards are they're just tiles. They're not even really dashboards. I mean, they're operational metrics, really. And it's just a query format that constantly will show you a query and some type of visualization. It can do just basic pie graphs and other types of visualization. It's not going to do anything like it's not going to do anything like Kibana. It's not going to do anything like an actual full dashboard visualization tool. It's not going to be Power BI or anything like that. We've gotten very far in having a centralized logging environment other than our SIM for our engineering and infrastructure to have access to be able to see a lot of this data without having to give them some type of delegated access to a SIM and then trying to teach them how to use the SIM and parse through it and then do all these things. A lot more, at least in our aspect, that's worked well for us. So if you look at some of this stuff, it's tracking RDP usage, computers created, accounts created, clear text logons per Microsoft's things. Windows Firewall data is not there, but you can see the app locker data events are down there that is being tracked. Failed logins all across the board. PowerShell use, again, and batch service logons, account deletions, anti-forensics, things like this. I'm not going to go through each one of these. And there's like an actual day range. So it's like most of these are 7 days. Some, I think all of them are 7 days. Some of them might be 1 day, but most of these are all 7 days. And this is just something that you can see and visualize very quickly to see. The RDP usage is nice to be able to see if there's an influx of crazy RDP usage. And then slowly, I know some of the projects that I've been working on is restricting and going through and setting everything through RDP gateways and really limiting the use of RDP and things like that. That's something we've been working on, so we've actually been tracking that throughout the environment. Some of these people see like these dashboards helpful. Anyone have dashboards like this, so that useful with the products they have or anything? Yeah. Something similar?
Yeah. Yeah, I use Splunk. That's very similar.
If you have Splunk, you're like, yeah, you guys got the money.
Well, I tried this and
you
like I said, I really
got the money.
oh,
Yeah.
So much.
How many people have Splunk in here? Okay. Yeah. So if you want to save like $600,000 billion, you could spend the agony to switch over to something like Graylog. There are things that Splunk does amazingly, but there's a lot of things that something like Graylog is essentially a lightweight version of Splunk capabilities. Graylog does have an enterprise version. It gives you a lot more support and ease of use and simplicities that Splunk has. Again, it's not going to do everything Splunk does. A lot of things that we talked about, and we mentioned the Hive, and we'll get into that. There's a lot of components and licensing modules that Splunk does that does the same things. But again, you're paying a lot of money for this. And if you have that and you can do that, that's great. I would at the end of the day, I would go to a Splunk instance if I could and have the resources. It's definitely a beautiful tool.
Save a lot of time, that's for sure.
It does. So, anyone have any other? No? All right, cool. Here I'm going to go to another dashboard here. Again, was hoping to be able to actually play with these things and give access to them. But this is a specific security one. This, again, tracking failed logons, failed logon reasons, and top IPs and usage and things like that. These seem like large numbers, but they're not really that large, at least the amount of data that we get in. But how many people do not have an account lockout policy? Everyone has a lockout policy? How many people have protective security groups enabled? Do people know what that is? How many people have that enabled? How many have tried to enable that?
That's the issue right there.
Yeah.
So we have that enabled, and that was why that number is that large. Again, it's dangling just things out there trying to log on, scripts and things like that that we've locked down, and it doesn't actually have any operational impact. It's just dangling things out there that need to be cleaned up, that are attempting to authenticate. But protective security groups are something that you can, it is possible to enable. We have enabled it, and we've used things like tracking items like this to really see where the issues are before we did that, as we migrated users into that. Any of the hurdles around protective security groups like to share?
It was a fight with our infrastructure and LAN and our PC management teams.
Yeah.
And it's still ongoing, but I haven't won the things.
Windows is definitely doing some things right now. Microsoft and protective security groups is definitely a very interesting thing to look into. If you haven't looked into that, I recommend looking up some of the documentation on that and the restrictions and the default parameters it puts around a account. It's very interesting, and there's things that are probably in that documentation somewhere that you will not read and you will not see or not understand exactly what it happens, and it will things will happen when you do that. And just test it and understand it. So it's fun stuff.
We got the first step done, which was separating their normal logins from their restricted logins.
How many people do credential partitioning here? How many people know what credential partitioning really means? How many people know what credentials are? There we go. I got there. Now we'll meet in the middle. So credential partitioning, I'm sure a lot of people are aware of that, but that's when you have essentially separate accounts, separate credentials for certain activities. And then enforcing that is, preferable and usually required. Usually your domain admins, keys to the kingdom, have some type of account that only has that access. Those accounts cannot log on to end user stations. It can only log on to domain controllers. You only log on to domain controllers. You don't log on to servers. You don't log on to your PC. You don't log on to a end user's PC with a domain admin credentials. Because what happens when you do that? What happens? What happens? It captures what? Caches the credentials, right?
Most of our elevated accounts, or accounts that need elevated or have that privilege, use RSA tokens in order to log into them.
Oh, on top of that, that's good. Yeah, so you have two-factor, multi-factor, some type of other factor authentication.
So, yeah,
how many people were using Microsoft MFA last week?
Nobody.
Good answer. Nobody.
Not on Monday.
Not on Monday. No MFA Monday. Okay. Yeah, so that's very interesting. We have experimented, or we have on the tool to experiment with things like YubiKeys and things like that. Right now, we have specific VDI machines that they can only log into the domain admin account for that VDI machine, not their actual computer. So it's gotten those credentials off the actual end user machine that you email all that stuff with. Credential partitioning can go even further to the server environment as well as the end user environment, and then also the end user to escalate to local admin and things like that if needed in very special use cases. That is called, how many people are familiar with the Microsoft tiered model, security tier model? I recommend, if you don't look that up, it will be, I'll put that in some of my notes too. It's not really security operations automation, but it is also, some people just feel like there's a jackass in here right now. So look that up. They have a tiered model going from tier 2, tier 1, tier 0. Look that up. Again, that will help enrich and focus your automation capabilities. So right now, instead of having to log all the machines that domain admins could have access to, we only have to log certain machine or or put alerts around certain machines because it's literally enforceable only on those machines. It helps your automation when you do some of these segmented accounts and credential partitioning. And it also helps you, once you do that credential partitioning, to actually put people in the protective users group. Because then, again, it's only domain admin account anyway. You put that in protective. If you try to put a regular user in protective users group, that is going to be very interesting. Because, again, a regular user does things that policy will enforce and make it the account usable, potentially. I'm sure there's probably a way to do it. I'm sure Microsoft will tell you, but it's definitely usable at the higher tier levels. Okay, now I'm going to go on to SNMP monitor. How many people are familiar with Libre NMS? Anyone heard of this? Anyone have like a SolarWinds equivalent or some type of network monitoring system? Huh? Netmon. SolarWinds.
What's up, Gold?
Huh?
What's up, Gold?
What's up, Gold? Okay. What's up, Gold? Okay, cool. You know that a lot of those network monitoring tools, like What's Up Gold as well as SolarWinds, have an IPAM built in? I don't know if What's Up Gold specifically has an extra license on it, but I know that SolarWinds usually, I could be completely wrong on this, has an IPAM license if you have SolarWinds. You can use an IPAM just like you could PHP IPAM. Just to let you know that a lot of your tools might have some of these capabilities, and you can take advantage of it. This is something that we use. It actually connects. It has native integration with PHP IPAM.
That would be great if they had the same owners.
Huh?
That would be great if they had the same owners.
They don't have the same owners, but they have native integration.
No. What I'm saying is I've got one group that owns SolarWinds and another group that manages the IPAM, and they don't talk.
Oh wow! We really have a very unique, similar environment. That's why we created the IPAM. We actually in our environment, but very interesting. Do you have a separation of your wide area network team and your, say, local area network team?
Yes.
That's what it is. Yeah, that's what we have too. Just because of the amount of buildings and facilities we have, it's set up like that, and they're separate teams. So it's interesting. So again, this is, I want to get to the point of this. Again, it's a network monitoring tool. It's getting SNMP information, so you can actually get, how many people are, with the information you have is, when there's a config change on a router or switch, would your SIM know that something was modified to a critical component and alert you of that?
All changes.
All changes go right to your SIM? And you just review those? Like every... I'm just very curious.
It depends. So all changes go, they're logged.
They're logged.
Right. But specific ones would create like a notable.
A notable action? Okay. How many other people would notice a route change on one of their hundreds of routers? And would you know that? Anyone do any automation around that? Of approvals of network changes like that? Config changes?
The network team has, they use Jira to track all their changes and requests.
Really? They use Jira? That's interesting.
But it's convoluted because we have 10 different teams that use 10 different ticketing systems. And they don't all talk to each other. And they're like, put a ticket in. And they're like, okay, so you put a ticket in, you don't get anything for 3 months. And you're like, you're constantly updating the ticket, like, I'm not getting anything,
Okay.
Yeah, so changes are tracked, but I feel that we have a lot of rogue net admins that make a lot of changes, and then I'll see a ticket come in with like 30 different things in it. I'm like, wow, that was just put it in and put it all at the same time.
Okay, yeah, definitely a problem. And we do have SolarWinds, but we have a separate Libre NMS system, so we can track configs and changes separately and holistically, even though there's somewhat of a redundancy. But again, it has the APIs into all of our systems that put enrichment data and things like that. I'm going to skip 2 slides, I think, to right here. I'll go back to that. But this is an example of Libre NMS and showing a specific Cisco device, the amount of utilization it has. Someone poked Masa. Is it? That was the name of it, I thought. Masa. What was that? it's Moza. I think it's Moza. Anyway, parrot's name is Moza for people on camera. We have parrots, we have horses in here, we have all kinds of things. So this does the syncs and the configs and the changes, and you can go in and put specific alerts around that. You can do that with SolarWinds, you do that with a What's Up goal and things like that. But again, as if you're doing it, are you doing it in a way that's then pushing back to something that you can actually see that event data quickly without going into different systems? I'm going to go through over here, back to the last slide. I must have messed these slides up, but this is like a basic environment that we have right here. Again, we have the PHP IPAM. We also utilize things which is we have multiple things that do multiple things, but they are focused areas. So we might have a specific SIM that things are going to. We do use OSIM in certain areas because we get better data, and we want to look at those things with just different configurations, and we don't have the licensing budget to pay for those, so we just custom configure OSIM on a small network, our environment, and again, all the data feeds back up. And we also have, again, the Hive is going to be a huge piece in its orchestration. Again, a lot of the things are built on Elastic, and Graylog's kind of the focus of that with the event collector as well as NXLog. And then we kind of have Libra NMS as well doing SMP. And we have, which is not the open source version of this, but we do have Rapid7. We don't have, we only have Nexpose just for vulnerability management. Again, you see that we have OpenVAS up there too. So Rapid7 is only doing our critical assets and things like that, and doing some passive scanning and things like that. So this is just an example of an environment that we have. There's a lot more in here. This is just some of the components that we're talking about here for orchestration.
Do you utilize Bro at all?
We have tested Bro on our network and doing some things. We had we were putting Bro on Raspberry Pis on specific subnets and trying to track lateral movement, things like that, or certain that we might not have as much visibility. And we had some good. It was good, but we just got the data through other means. And the other thing that we had up is that we had the modern honeypot network to get things like that. You can actually, it's a bleed through threat stream. It's also free. It does some interesting things. Not as much as obviously Bro, but you can run some honeypot stuff on Bro. We also had a problem with forwarding Bro logs and making sense of them in other systems. It was nice to analyze on the system. We also tried Security Onion places. And the other thing that was very interesting that we used, and I would like to use again, was if you ever heard of Selks. Has anyone ever heard of Selks? Has anyone heard of Suricata? So Selks is Suricata built on the Elk stack. And it's one package. It's by a company, I believe they're over in either France or Germany, and it's good. It's really nice. I recommend trying it out. I know that I want to try it out more than we have before. We got a lot of good information from it, but it's a learning curve because we had to support a full Elk stack. And that's one of the reasons we went with Graylog, because it's just we got the availability or the quickness of the searching and responsiveness of the Elastic search database with the simplicity of not having to go through a full Elk stack support. So if you think Graylog's hard to try to put an Elk stack in there and forward things to it. That's quite the...
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
Alien Vault, it uses Suricata, right?
Alien Vault has the Suricata as well as Snort and all kinds of things inside of it. It's essentially like a security onion where just a lot of things are in there. Yeah. Suricata is nice. We use Suricata for some of our IDS systems at our perimeter and outbound egress, but it's not built on the Elastic, the Elk stack, or anything like that. It's just basic Suricata. A lot of people know some of the differences of Suricata and Snort, just for the general audience. How in the processing?
Snort's limited to single processor, or single thread.
Yes. Huh. Yes. Yeah, so Suricata works a lot, works multi-threaded. Can do a lot of things, parse it. It also has different rule set scripts. It has a lot of other different things. That's one of the primary differences of Snort. I believe Snort might not have a multi-processor one now. I'm unaware, but I know that for a long time those were the differentiating factors, and that was some of the things why we could run Suricata in a lot larger environment with lower resources. Okay. Again, okay, now we're getting kind of the, do anyone want to take a break real quick? 5 minutes, or are you guys good? 5-minute break? Good?
Sounds good.
We'll take a 5-minute break real quick, because we've been going
Do you need a
before
5-minute break?
I do. I do need a 5-minute break. We'll take a 5-minute break. This is like a 3-hour thing, so don't worry, we got 1 hour left. How many people having fun?
My stuff just says 4 hours.
Oh, does it?
That's what I'm saying. 'Cause,
Oh,
it starts
you're
at
on
2
for 4
and ends at
hours.
6.
If she wants to get her money's worth. Yeah.
Oh, let's do it. We'll be here all day. I'll stay here.
Yes, Nick stretches me.
He can talk all
Going back.
day.
You could just start your slides over.
Yeah.
We'll go get that.
And like pretend you didn't realize it, and just like give the same training for 2 hours. Like repeat it.
I'll teach you Korean. You can do it in Korean.
And this is
Okay.
You know what he does?
Doesn't he drive a forklift?
Moves boxes.
Tires. That's it.
And he was like, I can never be.
That's all it takes.
I was looking at the care after 5 years.
See how many people come back.
And Bridget's cousin, apparently, he sells it for cars. He's like, I would never do it. I take
Were you waiting for your next?
Thinking about it. Don't get me wrong, I really like this. It's great.
I asked you something terrible.
You trust him?
I mean, no, but that's why it's a approach.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I guess.
It'll be fine.
Is this supposed to be anything cool? Like,
Did you just walk away with this unlocked?
no, well, oh no, my buddy, the Mac that's shut, is the one who was.
I figured she did as soon as you said that. Or is it?
A very specific time. People walk away and leave the machine.
We used to, so
Some guys that do like look at stuff.
I went for a hack 5 training on PC, and we got it from the training. And some of the guys right there, we worked at the same company at the time, and I had written a script that we store data on a shared drive that all PCs have access to. She was unlocked it, plug it in, reach out, pull down a file, set the background, set a task, then check to see if the background is that, make sure everybody wasn't and then it was an email from their machine saying, you guys are like, shit, I'm off, so you don't. And I had one guy who was very diligent about it, like, he wouldn't lock the machine, but make sure that it was within an eye shot. As soon as he saw somebody, so I've been doing. So one day what I did was I ran a USB extension cable under to my desk. As soon as I saw him stand up, I'm like, started to walk away, but enough to where he plugged it in, and then like, saw the box pop up, and there's just immediately ran to it. Fun times.
Couldn't you have done that while he was standing there too?
Well, yeah, I could have walked in, but I mean, you would see me walk in, like,
Yeah, but I mean, since you had the extension cable,
oh yeah,
you
I
could have done
could
that while he
have.
was standing there.
But it's more fun to say, no, you walk away, I watched you walk away. Telling about the rubber duck was that areas, how we used to change wallpapers and stuff.
Next week, who knows?
Wait, wait, wait.
We're
It hit me really hard at first, but not. I said it hit me hard really at first, but not okay.
Those.
Oh, the road sweepers are already? Oh,
Those
oh,
are
I don't know.
disappear. Repurpose.
It's like, I was like, what did I tell you? Like, I haven't heard anything.
No. This was after.
They're not.
This is not one man. This is not information. Another source.
Hopefully they're going to good use.
Probably the next search that I get.
I mean, Firewall's pretty awesome.
Only the PC.
I don't know anything about what happened though. Or the wireless search detection. No way, a lot of students here.
Those that they all did it to the last minute. Do you think?
Yes, I was expecting a lot of students to be in it too. I mean, I was expecting to be in
You
I'm
also,
surprised you got the same
I didn't sleep earlier. Honestly, I didn't. I said it.
No, you did not.
Well, that's.
Oh, 2 minutes. I said 2 months. No, you did not.
Bread and butter, I think, Kevin. We just not set up there.
That's really just
Where's the Walmart?
There's always a Walmart.
I've already sent a picture over to me. You got photos of 81 and 70s around here.
They started off with.
Yeah, I was wondering why I was getting passed. I didn't realize until like I was 2 minutes away.
You're a man. Picked up on your voice.
I guess.
I'm Eric Waters.
Okay.
You reviewed my slides.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
Did you get that? Yeah, you gave that already.
Tomorrow.
Post
I say I'm tired. I need to go rest, but I know.
It's got some of the same theme
Probably.
as
By the way, I
this,
did
but I'm doing security automation for the blue team tomorrow.
So I saw that one.
Yeah, I told you when I did.
What's out there?
I didn't even want what you said. There's things like similar product.
No.
Well, it does, but it's breaking. So like they do sell a product.
I kind of saw it. Not as cool. Like this big. That guy's like because like I haven't done change the pitch of it.
They haven't.
Very long. I set up and page down and stuff. Because it's supposed to be like I see that they're about this big. It goes back to that core automation. I would so, but then he was like, it works out.
Next thing they're jumping up down.
There's some more.
What's it's sold out. Now what do you guys do?
I get that.
We're still looking for it. That's what I told people in the workshop. So, like I've done it and I've started learning some stuff. But like no one comes here.
Oh, yeah.
I have a feeling we can transfer. I have a feeling we'll probably
We're all figuring this out. So like I've been for the past 2 years.
Remember that family
That's really where a lot of mine comes from. Mine really started from the fact that we started using scripting and APIs, and we're like, hey, you just able to out. This would be cool. So I kind of built from that, and then when the source was hit the market,
mouse jiggler.
I know that's like when I think it was IBM.
Really?
Yeah, the answer something resilient, and I'm like, oh, this is cool.
No,
I'm gonna stand by your business.
A lot of
He locked himself out of the house.
Isn't that core? I mean, if you can set it up, your budget is sorry, hang on. My server is just higher. I can get the actual building platform. Even if you push it down.
Okay, good.
Really, just like the side effect.
now.
All right.
So since I was trying to like appeal to
I didn't get
like,
it. I didn't get
a
it.
huge audience, and you don't know who you're going to present to.
Right, that's why I didn't know. There's a lot of students last year here, so I was
I didn't
that's why I started,
Yeah.
and I, wasn't sure.
Yeah, so I kind of go through three phases that are very loosely coupled together, but it's basically like automating things that you already have, which is like SIM tuning and things like that. And then the second phase is scripting and APIs, and then the third phase is SOAR, basically.
Perfect, now I know.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
And I kind of go through to like some of the common sense stuff around automation, because I mean I've seen some colossal failures where people try to automate stuff that was never documented or anything like that. And so then it's like, okay, what do we do now? Well, what does the document say? Well, there is no document.
What's helped us through that, and I don't even have that in my slides, I wish I would have put it in there, but I can't talk about it, is that we've actually had an internal team, and we put a lot of anomalies, like GitHub application for some more orchestration scripts, and you've got the engineering team, and everyone put certain PowerShell certain things in there. And that sign,
Signing my well-worn copy.
and and things like that. And getting documentation.
Yes.
Open source, like
Well, this was the hammer at my last job.
Version control.
They didn't trust me for some reason. So I was just like, look, it's in an O'Reilly box. It's got an animal on the cover, so clearly this is raw.
And seriously, I mean, that's also part of the reason we wrote it. So you're like, look, it's been published.
It's a thing. All the tea you spill.
And then also we started to sign registries.
All the what?
All the tea. All the tea.
That's what we did very wary of.
And
your strict forms of that.
Me neither. I would like to punch her in the face.
I do not know.
Earlier, I was very, very close to just
try to
like
get
punching the wall until I passed out or something.
I wouldn't have blamed you.
I can't pass
Well, this was my first.
It feels so
Wine is
much
tea.
I definitely do like kind of.
Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah, super process.
I met her a couple years ago and then left a bad taste in the
Here,
air.
I'm gonna get people back in. I'm gonna corral them back.
Real quick, you can't forget a selfie. You're like
Do you want me to
right over. Would you mind?
That way you can get like a more,
I'm fine with that.
not just your like head, but like,
My-
your t-shirt, all that
My
stuff.
business partner is a big fan of yours as well. So
Who is
listen, his name's Eric. He's my business partner, and I just want to rub this in his face.
Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Perfect.
No, because that was important. That was an important.
You don't.
Thank you so much.
Just on his own.
Quick question
All right.
for you before you get started back.
Okay.
You had talked about some automated phishing
Officially off.
phishing tools that, like, it's kind of like you had a user would be like have a button that would give a report back, not just obviously a forwarded email, but something that had header information, that kind of thing. What kind of tools there have you had success with?
So Microsoft actually, are you 365? Yes. So Microsoft actually has a tool built in now. You can get the add-on. They've always had to report phish, like kind of built in there, but they actually have an enterprise customization add-on into 365 now. That's relatively new.
Something more than message trace?
Oh yeah. You can actually do it in the 365 Admin Console. It's an add-on that you can put on, and everyone will have a report to button. Another thing separate of that I recommend is Noble4. Noble4 is Kevin Mitnick's security awareness platform phishing system. They have a lot of free tools. One of them is the phish button. It's literally called. You can customize it, and you can literally give it an address to go to, and you can put it. You can upload it or install it as an executable on everyone, so it shows up in their Outlook client, or you can install it as an XML add-on within the 365 console, so every user will have it inside of either OWA or on the 365 client inside the message. You won't get metrics from that, you'll just get it forwarded. If you have Noble4's platform of Kevin Mitnick's actual full platform, it'll give you all the metrics, and then you can do phishing simulations, and it gives you little nice congratulations and things like that. Noble4 has also a slew of free tools, like Ransom, that will simulate ransomware on your machine in a way of knowing if there's free shares and stuff like that to connect to. There's they have like 24 different random tools. Still, like they could do. If you connect them to your Active Directory, they can do a scan, and we'll see like the top 1,000 passwords and all kinds of all kinds of just general tools like that. So KnowBe4 has a slew of free tools that you can use.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. So there are a few other vendors out there that have been offering free fish buttons and things like that. So I'm sure that there's probably articles out there that kind of compare them all. I started using fish buttons when they were through KnowBe4 when they first started implementing 3 years ago. And before that, at my previous employer, we actually custom put in a fish button into Lotus Notes. And that was fun. Because the Lotus script's awesome. Our user requests and IT ticketing system was in there too. It's still there today. So. We're starting back up. Everyone ready? Fueled up? Yeah, we cut all the other people that don't want to hear anything. So now we have the meat. We have all the cream. The cream. That's what I was talking about.
I know where you're going.
Yeah, you got me. MSP always has you covered, man. So let's see. So I can tell Adrian the time. It is 4:10. Note that. So I can tell him. All right. So this is an example of security operation management platform, specifically called the Hive. There are links. The Hive is on GitHub. You can look at that. They also have, it's called the Hive Project if you want to Google that. And go to thehiveproject.net. And you can go through. They have a lot of good information there. There's also something specific to look at the GitHub. There you can look up for the Hive Project Training VM. And you can download that and you can upload that into VirtualBox. And you can have the full Hive platform. We'll actually go through that, and I'll show you I will show you the platform as a straight instance. I don't have a lot of stuff in there. I wish I did have a full workshop, but this is the basic components of the Hive. There are other engines in there. The Hive is basically made up of a few different components. They kind of call it the 3-in-1 security platform. It has the security operations. It has a security orchestration piece, which is called the Cortex Engine. Everywhere you see like a little brain there, that is the Cortex Engine. It's essentially working as the management of different types of integrations and customizations and scripts that will get loaded through the Cortex. And then the Hive itself is essentially a case management system and ticketing system that will be able to visualize and track whatever alerts or instances come up and then match that data with other enrichment data. So it will go through specific examples of that. Also, the other component that is very integrated and compatible with the Hive is something called MISP. Other than the other Hive person, does anyone else know what MISP is? Yeah? MISP?
Information sharing platform.
Okay, good. Our information sharing platform. All right. So the MISP is just like has a lot of open threat feeds. How many other people are familiar with like OTX, Alien Vault's OTX? Right. Very somewhat. I want to say it's similar, but you can get OTX feeds. Again, you can get a lot of feeds into the MISP. The nice thing about MISP, and I'm sure other tools have this too, that you can actually create say an ASA firewall rule and things like that off of an observable or IOC, or other types of things. How many people have Palo Altos? Anyone have Palo Altos? Familiar? Do you have MindMeld integrated in that? You just have everything. You got MISP, you got MindMeld, you got Palo Alto, you got
tomorrow as well.
What?
And that may be covered tomorrow as well.
Yeah, so MindMeld has a lot of good, again, you're paying, through a product or things like that, but Palo Alto has MindMeld. I recommend looking mind meld up and how it works and the amount of orchestrations and things you can get. Because at the end of the day, if you have something come in, there's an observable, it attaches to a lot of your enrichment data, all of a sudden you know, okay, I have to implement X rule, and it might not just be block IP address, block domain. It might be a port, certain types of network traffic, and to be able to create those rules on the fly, it again takes more time. If it takes 20 minutes to you to find your IT asset inventory to know what it is, then another 20 minutes to understand what to do with that info, even if you have all the information, and then another 20 or 30 minutes to create a rule that you know is going to work if it's a little complex. A lot of engines now can right-click to kind of create and put that IOC and observable inside of a rule format, so you can actually put it into your firewall. So it's not just a basic, like a lot of them might have YAR rules, they might have snort rules to detect, but then how do you prevent that in an ASA, Cisco product or Palo Alto, Foresky, whatever you have, right? And a lot of items are kind of orchestrating that and making that easier. Again, going through this, again, you have the case templates, you have your cases. Going back to the basics and foundations is if you do use the people that had a lot of the automations, you have incident classification, like so you have a normalization of instances that come in if it goes to your SIM and it kind of escalates into an actual incident. So those are things that you can recreate and map into something like this to make sure that you're all talking the same language, as well as classifying, and when I say classifying the sensitivity of the data too, because again, the malware sharing information platform, if you're in a trusted work group or like we're local government, we might want to share some of our indicators with other local governments. We can actually choose to share what we want if we're classifying all of our data and IOCs off of that. And if we want to share something to the general community, we can classify that as well, just the overall whole case. So if you guys are familiar with something like the TLPs, traffic light protocols, being white, amber, green, things like that, of just labeling, classifying data, how it's sensitive and how much you want to share that for data sharing, things like that. So you have your case templates, your cases, you're getting your alerts or MISP events in there, so you're constantly getting alerts. MISP is something that would also tie into like your centralized logging infrastructure to see, are you getting indicators, are you getting IPs and things like that from things of known malicious activity. Or once you put something into the case, if it's a phishing email or if you're even manually putting something in there, an incident, it will automatically go through and analyze if there's reported MISP beta or other types of malware feeds and things like that. And then once you go into the analyzers and observables, it has things like the Hive have built-in APIs and analysis into most known, I would say, analyst use tools. So when you get an IP address, what do you do with that IP address? Let's go through some of that. What do you guys do? You get an IP address, something's bad, or domain, what do you do for it? What's the first thing you guys do? There's no right or wrong answer here.
Check its reputation.
Huh? Check its reputation. So what do people use to check reputation?
BT. BT.
BT? Firestone. Okay. Anyone else do something else? Right? Something like that though?
Combination.
Huh?
Abuse IP.
Abuse IP. Good. Okay.
Talos.
Antivirus, Talos, right? The main tool, who is, right? Just basically Shodan. Good, right? Anything else, right? Or any type of URL scanner, right, out there, right? Or maybe your product's built in, right? If you have Cisco, it might be going through, again, Talos, as we said. Palo Alto might be checking MyMeld, or just your products blocking, right? So again, those analyzers all connect to those systems. Can you imagine? Do you all go out there manually and check those things usually? I mean, no, you guys got that orchestrated through Splunk maybe or something. Right. So a lot of SIMs automatically check against things like OTX and maybe other types of feeds. Maybe they pay for feeds, right? So again, getting those things and tying them into. Did anybody have like a malware sandbox that they use? Internally? Anyone malware sandboxing?
Nobody malware sandboxing?
Well, the services we use.
Yeah, we have a
Sandbox, what do you?
I use just Sandbox or app.any.run.
Okay, so you when you're analyzing something, it's in like a sandbox like iExplorer or something, or whatever, your PDF or something you're opening in a sandbox. Okay, what about?
Wildfire. PA Wildfire.
Wildfire, okay.
To add to that, if you're a member of the InfraGuard, they have a nice sandbox.
Yep. Yeah, so,
Guardian,
huh?
Guardian, I think it's called.
Guardian, yeah.
Malware investigator.
Malware investigator, okay.
I think that's maybe.
So if you're in local government, you have access to something similar to InfraGuards through the MSI stack, and it's a generally just an analyzer. I think it's through ThreatStream, right? Also, if you use like Anomaly or some type of other thing, they could use a sandbox. If anyone ever heard of Cuckoo sandboxing, right? It's an internal sandbox. Again, a lot of those things, if you know that someone's got a malicious PDF or things like that, and they reported the email through this system, instead of just having it and be able to do all that analysis, and we'll walk through this ad hoc, you can actually tie into some of the APIs. VirusTotal, you can actually get an API. But a lot of your systems, a lot of systems already have that. You can connect in there. I don't know if InfraGuard probably doesn't have an API with it, but I know that other platforms, like the ones that we have for local government, we have an API key that we can just put in and automatically do it and send the report back. And you also be able to see the report in the system itself. So those are some of the things that you want to do when you get, and then the analysis report will already be there. So all those things can happen right when a user is reporting something and or an alert is kicked off. So you have all that data already enriched, and you have all that data already there for you to analyze, and you can already understand if, you know what, if I get a domain that came through as a phishing email, and the domain went through, but I know that my web filter or proxy is already blocking that, I'm probably going to put that on the lower priority list to look at than something that isn't being blocked by a web filter or any type of other firewall or defense in depth machine or system. Make sense? Fun stuff? All right, so just to also mention just a few other operation management and orchestration tools that are out there to look up, and again, they'll be in the notes that when I release this. What I'll probably do is, just so you guys know, I'll probably contact the organizers and have them send out to everyone that's registered, and it'll probably just be on their website or something like that, all that information that I have here. But the other things to look up are something, CrowdStrike has the Falcon Orchestrator. Has anyone had any experience with that? It's an open source. CrowdStrike actually open sourced that. Obviously, it's somewhat, let's say somewhat limited. Obviously, they want you to use their full tool. Anyone heard of that? Use that? That's interesting to look at if you're getting into orchestration, specifically security orchestration. Homeland Security actually has a tool called WalkOff. Never heard of that? Very interesting orchestration tool. So I recommend, if you haven't, I think it's not even the information assurance division anymore, but it's literally the NSA's GitHub. How many people have looked through the NSA's GitHub? Not their GitHub of everything, but our GitHub. Their GitHub. They have a lot of PowerShell tools, a lot of, how many people are familiar with STIGs? STIGs, right? So, I mean, if you get the STIGs, you're getting that from a DoD in some form. Right, NSA has a very large repository in their GitHub of security policies, Windows GPOs, all kinds of things that are ripe for the picking to be able to use, as well as orchestration things and tools and stuff like that. Definitely something to look at. Death to email alerts, right? This is additional integrations. Again, this is something called Synapse. Are you guys using? Where's the Hive guy? Right, Hive. Did he leave? Oh, back there now. Oh, he switched up.
Yeah, I got moved. I'm sorry.
I was like, you didn't get. Huh? All right. So, are you guys using the Synapse tool there? It's newer, and a newer Hive instance. Within the past, I think, 3 or 4 months. It's 1.1 right now. They actually fully connect into Exchange. They have an Exchange connector now, so they can read emails a lot better than before. It was a Python parser, which worked fine. But now it's, and I still believe it's built in Python, but again, and the Hive is built on a Python module, so anything is extensible with the Python. They have actually everything called, it's literally called the Hive for Pi. So they have an entire documentation on that for the Hive connector, so everything is going through essentially a like service-oriented architecture and main system, so you can you're able to extend the functionality tremendously because it's using one centralized connector there.
Is the Synapse like Cortex as far as a integration part?
So it's interesting. It connects outside of the Cortex right into. So the Cortex has a lot of is essentially the analysis engine, and then the Hive also has like a extension that's called for the 4Pi part of it, and it all goes back into the Hive and the Cortex. But it's kind of like they built off the extension module, something a little separate. So you can build in separate Cortex engines, but you can also then build in feeds through the actual Hive. So everything gets thrown in through the Cortex engine. It's just the input from it. So again, they have built in, again, so like when you go back to here, this is more in the specifics of this area right here. So then once everything goes in, it's still coming down through here through the Cortex engines. Before, there were Cortex engines directly. There are also Cortex engines that analyze and parse the email. Now what is happening, though, it's happening on this side. So it's actually getting it normalizing the data so it can do more with it.
So Synapse is not just an alert, but it can analyze the emails?
Yeah, it's essentially I'm not an architectural software engineer, but it's like a middleware parser. We'll go through it. I'll actually go through the email analyzer in more detail. And then the Hive recently also has a built-in native integration with IBM QRadar. Again, that's native. You can build everything in custom as well. So I think they already have one for Splunk. There's Splunk people out there. So I think that was their first one. So we have browsing time. So I'm going to try to do this since I am limited here, and actually browse through some stuff. So I'm going to get outside of this. It's going to be interesting how I'm going to do this. How far I can get. I can kind of get it up right here. Hold it. Okay. All right. Oh, it's like still presenting. There's my mouse. Show real quick. Boom. Okay. So I'm going to go through some of the stuff that I did talk about. Again, this is the Hive docs. It's the documentation within the Hive project. And I will increase this a little. So going through here, I'm just going to kind of go through some of this training material. They have an OVA for the training module. You can download this and go through. Again, it includes on the top of the Hive, the Cortex engine. Again, the API kind of connector engine, which is the Hive for Pi. The Cortex for Pi, which again is a different Pi connector for that. And any available Cortex analyzer there. So that is what you get. There are also more, let's see, go through so I can get all this. This is kind of the architecture here of the Hive specifically. So it is also built on Elasticsearch, which is nice. The front end there has a bunch of REST APIs. The Cortex Engine is there, where it goes through the different types of analyzers and responders. Responders are the things that just come back essentially with information externally. So that is I went through the workflow architecture already, and that is what the Hive does look like. We'll go more in depth into that. And yeah, so just wanted to kind of talk about how the Cortex Engine plays with that and everything. So we're going to go through and go back to the training. Again, you can get it. You go through and download this. There's previous versions, beta versions, and it lets you know how to kind of go through and use it. And there's a lot of documentation here. That's all I'm going to go through on that. The thing that I want to go through, though, is the Synapse Use Case. So this is a Synapse Use Case here. It's a demo. I'm not going to go through and read this word for word, but essentially someone has clicked or someone has gotten an email and actually forwarded it on to the CERT team. However that is, again, if that's through, again, in here it's saying that she attached it as an MSG file. How many people try to explain to users in a training to attach emails and send it to the, how fun is that? I mean,
Forward as an email.
Forward as an email.
Attachment, yeah. They never get it.
Right, Microsoft changing Outlook, how you do it every
single time.
The question always is, why can't I just forward it?
Yeah. And that's why buttons are amazing. Find a button, find a button. Take one thing that's not even security orchestration really related other than the source, find an email reporting button and use it. It changes the life of like training and awareness. And you will get a lot of people clicking that button. We have people that will click that button on every spam email. When I say spam email, I mean more like marketing email they get, junk email. We'll get every morning, we'll get 30 from the same person. At the end of the day, we call them up and say, hey, report this, and it's, at least they're reporting it to us, right?
We get people that will forward, they'll get a notification that, hey, just so you know, we just put this email in spam because it's spam, it's not an actual email. They'll forward that to us because they think that email specifically that they got that notice is spam.
You take it out of their spam folder.
And then they'll take it out of the spam folder and actually read the email because
we've gotten to the point where when certain departments send out communications and they don't say put in a signature or it's just weird, we'll get a whole thing and we have to watch out our orchestration piece so we don't automatically start blocking internal communication. And that's just a cultural thing that we have. It's kind of interesting. So you get the email, forwards to the CERT team. Look at that, it says Dear CERT team. Isn't that beautiful? It might not be nothing, just in case. It's nice. Again, there's so now that, and this is interesting because we didn't do this at first with orchestration. I've now been learning this through the Synapse. I didn't really think about this because we just had it automatically go to the Hive. And the email inbox is just like a transport mechanism, really. This is kind of interesting, though. So what the Hive is suggesting in this use case is setting up custom categories in the shared Outlook box for your CERT team for every one of your users or your security SOC analysts. Once it categorizes as that, it will automatically create the case. It will say that person, that's essentially setting that person is working on it. And and what they do is they actually have a manual intervention that they drop the folder into a specific folder name called the Hive. So the Hive is constantly looking at the folder name. Some people, as this is using a certain name, we actually have a spam at our domain just at our domain. So that's where the spam's going. It doesn't go to our cert team. Other stuff goes to cert team. Some people, everything goes to their cert team. So it depends on how. So that's why ours is the transport mechanism, because it's all spam going there. The only thing is going there is directed spam through that system. Nothing else. But this prevents potentially if you had one IT security at, or if you had IR at, you just had every user security at, you could actually control so not everything that people will send you is going to the Hive or going to your orchestration platform. Put a folder and you put logic around that. So again, they're drag and dropping into the Hive, as you can see there. You can see it unread in the Hive folder. Okay, it goes down. So now there's a GET request going to Synapse, and it goes in and it goes through the API. And again, the specific URL that system was coming from, as you saw, was from stargazer.org. So Synapse actually does the FQDN and sends it toward. Let's see, I'm trying to follow this. We are not using Synapse yet. I'm actually looking forward to it. It seems like it has a lot better workflow engine than the basic email parser that's in the 4.5. So again, automatically creates a task. It assigns it to EE, which was the person that actually categorized it. It gets created as a strange email from and that person. Again, it's all built in however you want this, the workflow to go through. Some of these things are built into the Hive directly, like, as I said, the TLPs. You want everything coming from a specific income of having a specific TLP, and then you can lower or higher that as you go through it manually in the process. So you'll see the case created. Again, inside the Hive, you actually create tasks for each case. So again, Synapse created the name communication. And so it will actually connect the full email body to the cert team there. Attachment handling, there's an attachment there. These are what we're talking about the observables there. So that's an order form, the PDF. If you drag anything into a Hive case, it'll automatically create it and put the file name there. And if you have observables or you have systems connecting to VirusTotal, automatically run that through VirusTotal scan and get you the summary of the results. And let's see if that comes through here. Again, that's going through the summary of the email message here. It automatically has the headers in there. So when you reply back, and it also CCs the team, so when you're adding any information inside the Hive, this isn't showing a lot of the information, so I knew this just came out, so I was going to use this for this class. But so inside the Hive, when the person put in communication, the task communication, it actually will automatically email that person something using the Exchange connector. So like we have inside of the cert. Inside of our cert thing, or inside of our cert email, we had it set up where it automatically notified the user that we're working on the case. That's just a cultural thing. How many people have that set up, like auto reply or something like that? What you can do is you can essentially get auto replies as you put and work in the case information to update the user if you want to do that. So I'm hoping this gets into. I'm gonna have to just go into the Hive directly. This is going through configuration. Okay, that's not showing what I wanted to show. What I wanted to show is it takes the PDF, it runs it through VirusTotal, it comes back, it creates observables with the MISP. And I'll see if I can get some of that up. Let's see. All right. Oh, I don't have any. That's fine. All right, so we'll go through and just go through some of these things, and then we'll go to one of the exercises that I have built up. So all the way at the top here, you can see the summary of all the analyzers. Can everyone read this? I was hoping that use case in the Synapse thing. So it's note to self: don't use walkthrough documentation that you don't know what it really says. So here are a lot of the free analyzers that's built into the Hive that you can attach through the Cortex Engine. Again, a lot of people mentioned Abuse Finder, the Cuckoo Sandbox. If you have a Cuckoo Sandbox running, obviously you have to have some of these systems running. D-Shield, email parser. Again, that was what we'll take in and actually parse through the email for IP addresses and other types of domains and information. Google Safe browsing information. I'm not going to go through every one of these. The MIST warning lists. OTX query. You can query your OTX API. You go through ThreatCrowd, URLscan.io, which is actually very interesting if you guys haven't used that before. One of my engineers found that, like, I think maybe a year ago. It's very interesting if you use it before. It gives you a screenshot. There are other ones that do it too, but it does it very well. It gives you a screenshot of the website and things like that. And you can kind of like crowdsource what other people are reporting, things like that. Again, analyzer requesting special access. That means that you need some type of account or specific, maybe small paid API access. Things, obviously they have IBM X-Force, you probably need that. There's Shodan is essentially the one I wanted to connect here. Every, I believe, Black Friday, Christmas time, and holiday, Shodan has a deal where you can get like a $5 lifetime deal in API to Shodan. I recommend getting that. How many people have a Shodan account, like an actual account? Right, have you got it during the $5 window?
Of course.
Well, of course, right? So if you don't know that, they have I'm sure it seems like it just runs year round, but it's always randomly. Watch the Twitter. It'll be a $5 deal. I don't even know what it is normally. It's probably not even
$50 bucks.
Huh?
It's $50 bucks.
Okay, yeah. So
It's always on Black Friday.
it's always on Black Friday. It's always on like various holidays and things when I decide to. So recommend doing that and connecting that up. Just general thing is that how many use Shodan on a regular basis? When you're doing that, what are you actually putting in to look up? That's kind of a weird question, but usually the IP addresses or domains. You put anything else in there? Huh?
Usually it's IP address for me.
Mm-hmm. You can actually
location sometimes.
Yeah,
location. You can put your ASN in there,
right,
as well. If you guys didn't know that, which is your whole essentially IP block potentially. It's see everything in there instead of putting an IP range or whatever. You can monitor just for your ASN. It's a lot easier to do. They also just recently put Docker instances that they're scanning up there. So that was just recent. I think there was like 1,000 the first day or something they put up there. I don't know how recent it was. I think it might be a month old. I only read Twitter every couple times a year, but that's something newer that they had up there. Again, subscription-based. If you have domain tool subscriptions, other types of things, emerging threats, subscriptions, Nessus subscriptions. Again, virus total, you can actually have a subscription to it as well to get the kind of the special virus total feeds that they have. Record Future is also on there. Does anyone use stuff like Record Future or anything with threat intelligence systems? Other than people said they use MISP. Do you guys use any other type of threat intel? FSI, the ISACs? Okay. They use Ultra Edge still or no?
What's that?
Do you still use Ultra Edge? Okay. Okay, yeah. So, again, those are the analyze specific. We're not going to go too much through this again. This is not really like a full working workshop here. Other things that I wanted to go over that I had up were on the Hive instance. Let's go. Okay, this is, I didn't log me out, so I don't have the internet connection right now. But this is, again, this is the training version of how it can literally just be uploaded to OVA and it's up. Passwords are the Hive and the Hive 1234. Change those when you get in there. But this is essentially what you're going to see. I tried when I had this up, thrown in there. I didn't want to fully set up and start putting observables. You actually do have to connect the Cortex analyzers and the APIs and stuff for it to start working. So this is just an example of like a domain, photoscape.ch, things like that. And you can start going through the waiting tasks, the alerts. This is kind of like the nice thing that it creates. And if you have a full sim platform that does this, it does all the open cases, case by status, the tags, and resolutions. We as a security department do more things than to just go to our sim. We fulfill web usage reports, we fulfill forensics reports, we fulfill vulnerability analysis and remediation, just random investigations that come, rogue things in the network. All those things are in our operations management. And we don't want to put those in our IT ticketing system because the IT ticketing system isn't built to have all those things and to upload malicious PDFs and start analyzing them and hold them. Because previously we used to just do that and just have those malicious PDFs on like a hard drive on one of our analyst machines, and that's not much better. So how do other people here, do you guys have one kind of, you use your IT ticketing system for all stuff, security operations, you use your own, use a combination of all your tools have their own ticketing system?
We have a combination. Investigations, one.
Right. That's what we're kind of in right now, is that some of our investigations can't be in the ticketing system even if we had it built in because it can't, right? This is kind of one of the tools that we can build in. And even if you don't have a Cortex Engine or an analyzer or observer attached to everything, it's still a central place to put it in and start tracking and case management. Well, we haven't done this. We haven't even really researched this, but it's kind of an idea of our IT team. They want to have centralized metrics. So we're talking about creating an API just to create that there was a case, and the case ID is this, and maybe put certain metadata around it, but nothing more than that. So at least the metrics can be, and the IT team, service desk team and stuff can be happy that we have our metrics there and we're doing something and we're not in our own black box doing our own ticketing. So we looked at interoperating like that. Has anyone else looked at that? Like, because your Splunk has like a ticketing system kind of built into it, right? Is that interoperated with your IT ticketing system? Or like all fully separate?
Not really. We use both, but it'd be nice.
I've never seen a ticketing system work well with Splunk.
Really? From an MSSP?
Or any sim, really. I mean, it's just a hard.
Yeah.
Can I get that in an email so I can send that to my boss?
They have an app for it. It doesn't do anything.
How about the Hive user in the back here? What have you guys been building this out? This looks familiar, I assume, in some form. What Cortex analyzers are you really using, or are you kind of just playing with it?
We use DNS, we use DHCP, we use VirusTotal, we use email, but not the Synapse through Exchange. We actually upload the message and do the analysis on it there. Those are the primary ones right now.
Okay.
But again, we're still in the phase of building.
Right. So as you can see, this is the case, but then there's the Cortex Engine here, where you can have job histories and like how things are being pushed off, and you can manually analyze things. You can put certain types of rules around automatic analysis tied to certain cases and things like that. You could essentially build the whole workflow engine in here. I'm not going to go through building an entire one or anything like that, because this is just random training OVA, probably won't be able to talk outbound or do anything. But that is essentially what you're putting up. It's very simple once you put your mind to it and you kind of focus on it, and it helps a lot to put everything in one place. So that is some of the just basic demo stuff I want to be able to show you guys as I go back to some of the slides here. Go. Done surfing. So again, that was what we just looked at. That's kind of it built out a little more. A screenshot. You can see that there's like a lot of stuff from the MISP is in there. Again, that's like open source intelligence, things coming in. You guys, someone mentioned InfraGard, right? When you get the flat, how many other people are InfraGard members? You get flash messages, PIVs or whatever. When they have IP or IOCs or observables, what do you do with those?
Start running through to see if the network, if they've been installed on the network.
Did you just like copy paste them from that PDF file and just throw them into like the thing, right? You guys do anything with them? A lot of places just don't do anything with them. We're just kind of look at them.
Put them with the rest of the fire.
Right. So a lot of you can actually go in and do a lot of parsing and stuff. So you can just upload those and parse it out, and it can automatically go through and enrich that data. And that doesn't seem like that's a big thing, but it is a big thing where you can just drag and drop and go through and see, as long as the parser engine works right, you can see if there's any hits. You don't have to really worry about it, right? It's really nice, especially if you get, we get intelligence from what was in CSV format of like malicious IPs and stuff from certain ISACs and things like that, and it's just gets to become a lot of data, even if it's easy to do. Just copy and paste data all day into your centralized log. It could be 2 or 3 FTEs just to start doing that, right? So I ignore that because we took a break later. But that's a white hat eating down some black hat there. So. So exercise time. Are you guys ready to exercise? Tabletop time? Are you guys done for the day?
Like exercising on tables.
On the tables, yeah, exercise on the tables. All right. If you've done exercise before, this is just general. This is for the 15-minute tabletops. I just start with this. Again, this is just generally the format and framework of a quick tabletop exercise. It's again scenario and the meeting learning parts. Points. Don't make the scenario too large. Essentially, read it out loud to the whole group. We'll do that, but that's in a meeting setting. And then use the discussion page. There's like a separate discussion page, which is kind of like an index page, but it's really just like what to discuss around. Those are things you want to focus on because those are going to be issues potentially. And then always take notes and of any potential gaps and identify any areas of automation that could help in the security operations. Again, there's do's and don'ts. It's pretty straightforward. We're going to go right into the scenario. All right? Ready for scenario time? All right. So, while reviewing access logs, an alert was raised due to an employee attempting to gain access to a network share file folder containing sensitive data, which requires a specific security group membership. Upon further inspection, you realize that the other folders that account has been accessing that contain sensitive data do not have any restricted permissions, but domain users. Web filtering logs also show large uploads to an unknown cloud storage environment that wasn't used by the enterprise. Again, I'm going to go right into essentially the result of it. That's how the quicker tabletops kind of work, is that it ended up being an email phishing campaign. That's I need to work on that. That was missed, resulting in credential compromise. The credentials are also used for ADFS and the SSO to VPN, resulting in a remote compromise of the user's machine invalid credentials, then resulting in data exfiltration. How many people think that is a realistic possibility to happen in an environment, right? Agreeable?
Yes.
Not too crazy of an attack chain, right? How many people know the entire folder permissions in their entire environment and monitor that, right? How many people know and scan exactly how many folders can be accessed in the NTFS permissions through just domain users? Right? It's something. It is, right? So this could definitely happen. How many people, when you're monitoring what you're monitoring, monitor when someone's trying to be accessing or try to add a group over and over again, even if it's unsuccessful? Would
In the financial world, yeah, I would monitor that.
you would monitor that, even if it was unsuccessful?
Yeah, actually, I would be looking for the unsuccessful.
Okay, all right. Anyone else?
I mean, our SIM would pick that up.
An unsuccessful attempt, not just successful?
Yeah, as long as the auditing's turned on for that.
Would you know that that group, that folder, actually had sensitive data in it or not?
Not specifically.
Not specifically, right.
Unless it was like a folder, we would know. I mean, if it's something that's HR or something. Then
Right, you'd
obviously
assume.
by the
Right,
name you would
exactly.
know.
And that's again, do you have folders that you know have sensitive data, or at least supposed to have sensitive data? Obviously, people can put things, and that gets into the whole DLP monitoring stuff. I'm just saying, like, you have policy procedures that you know that all these folders are specifically set for sensitive data, and you have probably, say, hard-coded static monitoring on those.
Well, in the financial world, we would only turn on auditing for areas where that
Right.
information is sensitive. Correct?
Right, because it's a lot of data to analyze.
Right.
We use a tool called Varonis, I think, for our shares.
You guys got money too, man.
Healthcare, man.
Varonis does a very good job.
Yeah, we use that to manage 80 group ads and unstructured data.
Yep, that's exactly what. So you would easily see something like that.
Yeah.
If you haven't looked up Varonis, it's a very interesting tool. It's very expensive.
Networks. Networks.
Networks is another kind of AD purchase tool and things like that. The other thing that you can use is Windows Events.
Yeah.
That's what those systems are using. They're just using it very well. Sometimes you gotta put the gloves on and type away.
Right. Sift through that manually if you want to.
Yeah, or automate it. So, again, the thing to take here when you're looking at automation and what to automate is looking at the things on the bottom here. I don't know if you can see because my laptop's kind of right here, is the time to fully investigate. How long would it take you to fully investigate this? I kind of have general numbers in here for a small business that has 1 or 2 security guys and maybe an IT department of a few dozen or something. But what do you think? Throw numbers out. What do you think? Don't sell yourself short. So yeah, so this is like one FTE, just saying, oh, yeah, I got one alert, I'll look into this. Oh, now I got another alert. So think about your alert fatigue too over this, right? I mean, or that's why I said 8 hours over 3 business days. Right. You'll get probably 6 different spam emails in between getting an alert like this and all that stuff. So, how long? Anyone want to be the first one to? No? No one? No idea? How long would it be individually for you to realize in your environment? No? 30 minutes? An hour? It takes 30 minutes for a phishing email. We know that. We talked about that, right? Potentially. You know, the Varonis guys are there like, what happened? It just blocked it. We didn't, it was milliseconds there. But,
in this scenario, are we using this guy's product here that lets us know everything?
No,
that's the question here.
This is just you and your current environment with your skill set. So again, think about that. Not only are you looking at the group membership, but you're also looking at the web proxy logs that were outbound. Also, the compromising the VPN logins that were probably anomalous, and then the phishing email that came in that actually compromising, because again, it was using valid credentials.
Now, are we also trying to determine what was taken and if...
No, this is just fully investigate to what this is, that you know that happened, let alone whatever the files were, right? And then how many people would have to be involved? So I have a kind of number here, like in your environment, you know, if we have segmented access or certain things, how many people you have to contact your firewall team, this and that, how many people are actually involved? Who do you tell your manager? Does your manager tell your manager? Is there, you know, how far up does this go? 15 people, and then when did it actually happen, right? This is potentially manual analysis, right? So I'm just putting this in there as 2 months, but it's just, again, arbitrary numbers. These are the numbers you need to think about when you're looking at scenarios like this to see how would you detect this in your environment. So it's something to think about.
I mean, I think you definitely have to look at like the activity level on that, right? So I mean, a user, if we're looking at this as a successful phishing email credential harvest, then I mean, even I think even your most sophisticated tools, if an indicator, if the user that got that those credentials signs in during normal business hours during the day, I mean, they already got the credits, they're not brute forcing it, so they're not getting one user ID 500 times in 10 minutes trying to log in. I mean, it depends on, I guess, when you initially pick it up.
Right, so I'll go right into the discussion points. So every 15-minute tabletop exercise that we do actually goes back to the NIST functions, and you could probably put them all on there in some portion, but I put a few examples, but we always try to put the NIST functions on there, and then we also have the discussion points here. So again, how was it detected initially? You know, manual analysis, or did the spam? Again, you were talking about what key items identified the RCA, right? Files being accessed, logon activity, web activity. Again, this is valid credentials, so it's not a fail. There's nothing to be. Now, maybe there was anomalous RDP traffic, right? Or maybe there was anomalous login through the VPN. Maybe you know that user only VPNs in. Like, why are they VPNing in the middle of the day? They're also logged in, right? Do you have anything that checks? And any of your products that checks that a user is logged in internally and VPN at the same time? Just something to think about.
The baseline per user.
Yeah, I mean, that gets that extensive, but even just that, do you have something that just checks again against, even if you have a baseline of when they log in, but just, is someone also logged into from an internal machine and VPN'd in from the outside at the same time?
What if they're VPN in from the inside?
Hopefully the
I've seen
customer
that
won't
before.
allow that.
Right, yeah, depending on your network
Because they just
architecture,
don't
you could hairpin out, right? You could hairpin back in. But yeah, so it's just like, do you have something that detects that, assuming that it was outbound? Interesting thing for the MSSP, right? I mean, do you have an alert? Kind of looks at a correlation, maybe you do, I don't know.
Depends on the service that the
Right,
customer
yeah.
purchased. And how,
Anything? Is that?
We do, yeah.
You have? That looks okay, alright. Would be something that you guys probably might not would think about? I don't know, I'm just discussing. I don't have any of this right now. I'm just off the top of my head going through some of these, right? What else could you automate? Again, you're just looking at instant alerting and correlation, then what could you automate? How did you know you would go through and see who was involved in the overall investigation, who was notified? So, for instance, once something maybe escalates to a point where you know it's an incident in the hive or whatever you're in, do you put, okay, now an alert has to go out to upper management, right? Does the email go to upper management and says, hey, we have an issue. It's not a critical issue yet, but it's something we're investigating. We'll let you know. We might need to get more staffing or involve maybe additional forensic services.
Where would you, or at what point would you work into getting in contact with the account holder and saying, hey, we noticed some unusual activity? Because we fall into that. Sometimes we immediately jump to the conclusion that there's nefarious activity, and then we talk to the account holder, and there's a use case that we didn't.
Right. Maybe they left their their VPN session open at home because they had 2 machines, and then maybe they needed to access a sensitive document because the ticketing system wasn't working, or their ticket wasn't getting completed, and they were trying to access this group and they couldn't, and then all of a sudden, they had access to a different group that had fully domain user access, and then all of a sudden they were just copying stuff up because maybe they had to work from home or work from different location because they were traveling to a different location. They were using some cloud storage that was shadow IT, right? It could be a use case, right? So when do you call the user? That would go back down to your policies and procedures of, do you have policy around when you do make direct user contact, when you have security event information? Do you guys have any guidelines around that? Anyone?
financial world, we did with our incident response policy, if an account was acting irregularly, you just shut it down. Then you inform the user, or let the user call you. But you stop the account from doing what it was doing first.
There you go. So, so very interesting. Again, and can you workflow this? So once you get an incident like this into like something like the hybrid orchestration, does it automatically email or contact the user, or put a task in for the SOC analyst to manually call the user and then put in the notes what they expect, right? There's all those kind of automations that can help you essentially go through your run books. Like, do you have a run book or a playbook around how you do your incident response processes, or any other procedural things you have, and you can just recreate those run books. Even if the tasks aren't automated, at least the tasks are there, created, and then you put in the data manually. And that's still getting into the foundational models of somewhat security, automation orchestration, and essentially walking an analyst through if they put in a phishing campaign. Now these are all the things that either the system's going to do automatically for you and enrich that data, and this is what you should do and when you should do it. This is when you call the user, it's not when you call the user, this is when you call maybe the user's manager, and things like that. What do you think would cut down the total time in something like this? Go back to the original scenario. What would be the most time-extensive thing here in your guys' environment, other than the Varonis people?
Well, the ability to detect right away.
Right away?
It would have cut down if the user would have notified somebody, hey, this could potentially be suspicious.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Report to the one thing you get from this. Get a report button, right? Or if they would have maybe forwarded the email correctly and as an attachment, right? Anything else?
That's assuming the user realized what they did or what it was.
Mm-hmm. Does your security team know the folder permissions and how those should be assigned throughout your entire environment, or is that something the engineering infrastructure know?
It's just a random Windows admin somewhere.
Rogue Windows admin under the desk?
Mm-hmm. 3 people.
No? Yes?
Well, in terms of automation, ideally ahead of time, you would have had a regular scan looking for open network shares. You would have an alert that says, hey, there's a large amount of data egress going anywhere, whether it's a recognized cloud service or not. So if those are things that an analyst saw in the activity, and that you can figure out that is something that is atypical, then put a monitor on that alert so you're notified of that ahead of time.
Right. Does anyone here have something that analyzes exfil of data? Exfil of data? You're like a web proxy or something, or a proxy monitoring, or so if I upload 50 gigs to a random Dropbox.
Oh yeah, I mean, so we could have
alert the NetFlow data or something. NetFlow.
That's from all firewalls.
The firewalls.
Endpoint DLP.
Endpoint DLP. CASB, yeah. CASB would be a prime. I know that's what I would do. Is what we have capable is a CASB solution that would. Well, I didn't say the CASB. The CASB solutions product has a shadow IT component.
FUIT. That's what we do.
Oh, okay.
FUIT.
Yeah, there you go. Anything else? No one else detect that? Egresses? Upload all? So work, yeah.
I mean, we detect encrypted uploads. Or actually detected and blocked it at our border. We also actually block all file storage.
All file storage, as it's categorized by a product?
Yes.
So a new file storage or something?
Obviously, yeah. Obviously, we also get new.
Yep. Someone that has like own cloud set up on their home,
Right,
and
then you're not going to.
Right. I know. Those are the things to think about, just as the devil's advocate, right? Not that you have to have an answer for every scenario, and that's why I kind of said unknown cloud storage, meaning that it's not something that's categorized by the web filter that you could be whitelisting or blacklisting, unless you're potentially blacklisting uncategorized. How many people block uncategorized network activity by their whatever they have, firewall?
We do. Yeah. If it's not categorized, we don't let it out.
Do you get a lot of categorization requests?
Yeah.
Okay.
But they're required to go, the process we have, they're required to get their vice president or their manager sign off before it hits security.
That's beautiful.
So we don't have to worry about
So you know,
we don't get the dumb
authorized.
ones and then have to bump it up to the VP.
Right.
It goes the other way around.
Yeah. See, we're a local government. We do a lot of small businesses, right? Very small businesses, legitimately so. Everyone down to the local barber that goes to the jails and cuts people's hair. They have a website that's somewhere, and they need to get to it for vendor information and all kinds of stuff. It's very interesting to see how much things aren't categorized because it's not a large, on the top, 1 million list or something like that that's traversed. But there's a way that we've tried to automate categorization, right? So the help desk can go through and categorize something, whitelist it first, then categorize it later after analysis, things like that that you can look at doing. In this type of investigation, how many people would you only deal with your security team, or would you have to deal with like 2 or 3 different IT teams? Maybe escalate to a manager, obviously, supervisor, maybe even higher.
We actually, this has been probably the best thing that we've done. We have a person that sits on the infrastructure team that is an FTE out of the security budget, and all they do is security requests. So anything we need to do that we don't have access to for separation of duties, that FTE is capable of doing. So they're a point person for anything infrastructure related.
That's good. That's
So
good.
you have a mole.
Exactly.
We've done something similar where we've actually give a SANS training to somebody just denoted that person as the security hat. They get training and stuff like that, so they kind of see it as our advocate, things like that, which is kind of somewhat similar. But the thing is, at the end of the day, is that if you have a CERT team or you have your incident response plan, is there someone that was involved in this that wasn't in the CERT team that should have been? Or maybe should not have been, right? And when should they have been? So you can kind of refine some of your policies, again, because your orchestration and your automation is going to work off of your policies and procedures. You don't want to start automating and orchestrating things that don't have any documentation or policies around, right? Because that's just going to get wacky. Then they're going to be like, why are they in this workflow, right? There's no actual, so again, it's only to be back to the foundational things, your automation orchestration is only be as good as your policies, your procedures, your data integrity of your assets, as well as any type of other enrichment data that you have available. So again, we're going to go through here and go through the measurement, improvement, ROI. So how many people in their environment measure ROI specifically in the amount of analyst time spent on something, even if it's something focused, right? So here's some just quick interesting math around, again, number of phishing emails per day is 40, right? That's not a large amount to get reported, right? I'm even assuming a 0.5% on an 8,000 person organization. To say 40 is a relative number there. I did manual review would be 1 hour, but as we discussed earlier, it could be 30 minutes. So you can cut all my statistics in half. It's still a significant amount of money. Again, average hourly rate of an analyst, I think the average on like Glassdoor is like $39, but I just put 35, right? I'm government. So it's probably less than that. But whatever that is for you guys, you have that statistics and easy to get, right? At least what you make yourself, at least. So you can use that or go higher or lower based off of whoever's job it is to look at these things. As we said, most people don't have more than 5 people, so it's usually you guys in the room anyway. So you go through the overall cost estimation. It's very interesting. There's only phishing email, and it's very simple math. That's over $1,400 a day to handle those phishing emails. That's assuming you have 5 SOC analysts to handle 40. right? Or say it's 2.5 because you can do it in half the time in 30 minutes, right? And then, so say you don't even have that amount of people, what type of risk are you absorbing, right? What type of, like, if you had only 2 SOC analysts, you might go down to 60% of the emails are being backlogged every day, right? Or 30% if you're, doing it in 30 minutes, right? And what amount of risk is that is actually pertaining to your environment based off of some type of industry reported statistics that you could use and back up in an executive meeting? Well, 20% of users generally respond or click on phishing emails, right? That's going to change based on your security awareness, your type of user, your industry, all that stuff, right? But basic survey and research kind of shows that, give or take. So that then you could kind of, that's like 12% of those emails that are being backlogged could be compromising your network, right? So where does security orchestration or automation work for you to make sure that 1 hour goes down to sub 5 minutes, right? Sub 5 minutes in this analysis, that would be, you could have that amount of staff savings and do everything under 3.5 hours of triage time, or even less than that if you're doing 30 minutes, right? Half that time. Did anyone ever really look at that? I mean, it's not mind-blowing math there, but it paints a picture that executives and fiscal officers kind of might understand more than, hey, I get all these phishing emails and I don't have enough staffing and we do all these things, and if you just say, like, it takes me 30 minutes to do this X task, we get this amount of tasks in place, this is how much it costs you to staff these people, and this is how much it's costing you a year. And if I invest and I buy this $150,000 orchestration system, or spend this on another staff person to build this system, I could cut down, $360 or $140,000 or $130,000 in staff, right? Does that make sense, or does that seem pretty easy? Did you guys do something like that?
Same strategy we use to sell MSP services.
Look at that! Look at them using math. Anyone else? Though, I mean, really, either your CISOs or CIOs. I mean, do you talk with them about this stuff, or your managers, or maybe you're the person?
Previously, I had to show how if I wanted to purchase something that was a major purchase, how it was going to affect the budgeting for the company. I would have to produce something like this. What was our return on the investment? Which was where was our break even, and how would we grow after that?
Does that make sense to another? How about the Hive? I mean, how did you guys get the Hive? Just kind of got it in. It's open source, so you can kind of free. You can put it in there. You can test it. You can build it out. I mean, or did you guys kind of go through an ROI? Obviously, you knew you needed something, right? So, was there any general? Just interesting.
I mean, it was
I think it has to be, but
it was a finding actually from a table play.
Okay.
And
look at that. It's like I'm.
No, it wasn't. And so time was spent evaluating. The Hive is not the only kind of security incident response and tracking, even in the open source one. And we went through all of them. We reviewed them, and we chose the Hive based on its functionality, its analyzers, and all of those things. But obviously there was, there is, it's not that there's no cost to put up server, you have to back it up, you have to do all those types of things, VMware licensing and all of that, but it was inexpensive enough that it didn't require a lot of cost justification, but justification around a lot of other products are obviously return on investment. But some of them are not just, don't always come down to $1 per email kind of analysis. A lot of it comes down to also, how much risk reduction do I get with this money? So that also factors into that.
And for me, the risk analysis was the biggest weapon I had. If we did a risk assessment and we had a known high risk issue that our board of directors decided, we're just going to accept the risk, and then the auditor or the federal auditor came in and asked why, they had to explain that. And they didn't want to sit through that meeting. So generally, you could show the amount of risk that you could deter the cost wasn't as much the issue.
Anyone else on that? You guys looking at that stuff. Hopefully you're looking at that in generally, maybe not between the specifics with something, but another thing to take into consideration when you look at like your average of phishing per day, it's 40, this, that, gets to this. But then what happens if something like this happens, right? So all of a sudden you have, that's your normal data there, your normalized data, and all of a sudden you start getting a phishing campaign against you, right? And yeah, luckily the blocks are going up along with the total and the quarantines are going up, but what's getting through, right?
Who's it getting through to?
And who's it getting through to, right? Again, once you start getting saturated with logs like this in an attack, how are you analyzing that things that aren't getting through? Obviously, your blinky boxes and things like that are doing a lot of the front work in that, but that there's probably percentages, very low percentages getting through, and unfortunately, as you all know, it only takes one time, right? So how are you orchestrating to make sure that you're covering all your bases when all of a sudden your intake of potentially even just one event being emails, spam emails, increased by 200-300%, right? You don't have all of a sudden 200-300% people working for you, right? Can't call in the cavalry or anything like that. So that's something just to think about, right? And something also, there's an additional ROI calculations you can do for that to normalize and all kinds of more into statistics and stuff like that to make sure that you're covering all of those. But it's definitely something to review and go to upper management. It's pretty simple and it talks to them usually. So that makes sense to everybody. Okay, I got a quick examples, time permitting, because I wasn't sure of the time on this. I know people are walking out here because we're kind of reaching they have me going to 6. I don't think I'm going to go to 6. So I'm going to go through these examples pretty quickly. They're not large examples at all. They're just 2 slides of the two examples here, and we already kind of talked about them, right? So when you're looking at your security operations, a host firewall analysis, again, are you looking at how many people are actually looking at all the ports internally that are being used? I'm talking about workstations, right? When you start going and getting that data, even if you were getting that data, what are you going to do with that data? There's no way, unless you're going through like already an instance that is analyzing that for you to put context around that to be able to make sense of that data. Here, this is an example of a large amount of traffic that is being permitted, and it's a large port there. I believe that is port, I think like 1947 or something. So large that. Who do you think that port ended up being? It was huge.
Video.
Video. Mm-hmm. We don't even allow only port 80 out anyway. Well, unless it's just a firewall rule for it, but I mean, this isn't a server, so this is just a workstation. So again, this is more lateral movement going on. What's the most evil things in the IT realm? No?
File shares? First-person shooter?
Printers. Printer, right? Those are rogue printers, right? People who use their own printers up, they map them directly. Would anything stop someone from putting a printer and mapping it directly? I mean, are you guys doing port security on every Ethernet jack? Port security on every Ethernet jack? With MAC address whitelisting? That's how it works. Huh?
Domain log.
Oh, okay. Domain log. What happens if it's a non-domain joined machine, like say like an IoT or something?
It gets MAC. It gets MAC.
Is that to a product or just
Is that
huh? Okay.
ICE? Is that ICE? Money, man. You guys got big money here. We got Varonis, we got giant Splunk instances, we got Cisco ICE around here, Palo Altos. You guys have any dark trace in here?
We're in the POC process with it.
I've heard some
No offense to Dark
interesting
Trace, great product and good for it, huh?
I've heard some interesting things about Dark Trace.
I'm not involved in any of that.
So, anyways, those are things to look at when you're doing port analysis, right? Is there what are the top ports? Even if it's not top ports across it, what top ports per machine that are over, say, like 30%, right? Those are the things you have to look at when, again, it's almost getting into like somewhat correlation in your logging and infrastructure and your SIM. But again, it's not something that's going to replace your SIM. You're just making sense that it's more data analysis, right? And then off of that, you can make your orchestration or some type of automation. Here's another thing here. This is, apparently we're blocking IPv6 until we started looking at a giant amount of IPv6 traffic internally. And that's interesting. What was it? Again, a printer, right? Do you disable printers? And if people bring them in, do they just connect them and all of a sudden IPv6 them around, right? So, very interesting stuff. How do you guys do MAC address filtering for IPv6? Is it a separate adapter? Is it the same way, or have you tested it?
We haven't tested it. We don't use it.
Yeah. So the thing is that most likely MAC address, but those are the things you might want to test to just make sure, especially, I'm sure Cisco ICE is doing all that kind of stuff, but sometimes, again, IPv6 is an interesting animal. So just be cautious of that. Those are two things. Again, I always leave with this. I get a lot of people from either when I'm in my private sector or in the public sector role, saying like, you know what, this is all cool stuff, but it's not happening to us. How many people have heard of that? Well, it's not happening to us. We don't know what's happening to us, right? One thing I just recommend, it has nothing to do with security or automation or anything like that, is find all of the businesses in the area that are high level or low level or in your industry sector in like your general vicinity, if that's the statewide, citywide, or maybe tri-state area or something relatively close to home that people will know if you're a financial services industry or if you're an education industry, and then just make a slide like this. This is what I got, right? So we got websites hacked with ISIS messages. We have ransomware shutting down public sector. We have anonymous attacking cities and taking them down. We got employees hit with scams of W-2s. This is all just in our area, right? Make it something flashy like that. That's all. But at the end, just wanted to, again, taken away, is conducted tabletop exercises. Full day tabletop exercises are great, but they take a lot out of people. It's hard to schedule, hard to get all those people. If you do something like one of those 15-minute ones, discussion points, maybe a little more in depth, I'll include a bunch of tabletop exercises just in some of my notes, things like that you can use. There's also good things to follow on Twitter that have instant response, tabletop exercises and scenarios that are like tweeted out. I don't know if they're daily, but they might be weekly or in some type of frequent amount. Again, review your inventory system, but also how you access it and how quickly you can find something in there. And see if you can just get dumps of that inventory system and put it somewhere that can enrich some of your data. It might be very easy to do today, right? And then again, just start setting up bi-weekly lunch meetings to discuss automation, place things that you can do, scripts that you can get working. How are you managing those scripts? We were kind of talking about scripts earlier, and the thing that be very cautious of when you're doing automation, especially stuff with the Hive and other things like that, is that when you start running out and doing all these automated tasks and blocking things at the firewall level, make sure your scripts aren't also going to be your the end of your days as well, because those things are hijackable easily. And the worst thing security people and the best thing security people can do is develop things, and it's kind of a double-edged sword. Be very careful with that. Look at signing your code, PowerShell signing. If you guys have some kind of PKI or certificate store, look at signing it and look at code version controlling that stuff. Even if you guys aren't developing full applications, but you're developing scripts that change over time, look at version controlling. There are open source utilities out there. One that we use is Grogs, G-O-G-S. you can push up internally. It puts like a GUI on top of an internal Git repository. It's very manageable and easy. I'll include it in notes to use and have almost like engineering and infrastructure, share PowerShell code. We've found it being very useful because we had a disconnect with our engineering team for just PowerShell code for AD stuff and 365 stuff, and we started collaborating, sharing a lot on there. Also putting documentation with the code. There are probably code comments. There's probably like a little, in front of your VB script or whatever you got. You might have like a whole little comment section of what it does, but do you really have documentation around it? Why is it built? What's it doing? We've been using our when you look at Windows Event Collection, Windows Event Forwarding, and you're building that out and you're turning on and off subscriptions and events, we've been using that repository as more than like a full documentation around Windows Event Forwarding. We've been using that instead. It's been pretty helpful. And every time the code gets updated, we have to push it up there, and then the engineering team actually copies the code from there and puts it into the production. So it's kind of like just a very simple process you can put in place. Again, once you start talking through those things, it's bi-weekly lunch meetings, monthly lunch meetings about it, maybe lunch and learns and stuff like that. And as I discussed earlier, is load up the Hive, training VM, play with it. There are other ones, I don't know, and when you're talking about looking at the Hive and other things, there's also other things like FIR out there. It's called Fast Instant Response. It's also another operation management. I don't know if it doesn't do the Cortex stuff, but that was something that we looked at first. It was through a SANS, I think a SANS or French government or something kind of like backed it. So we were looking at other U.S. CERT teams. We were looking at other CERT teams in general, like nation CERT teams, country CERT teams, and just to see what they use to manage all their cases and incidences. So I recommend doing as much research as possible with that. And again, also, just talk about when it's the right time to bring in automation. If you don't have the things, you don't have to automate things. But again, if you build the processes, then maybe you can eventually automate it, right? So that's kind of all I have. I'll leave you guys with that. It's about 30 minutes early. I'll take additional questions and leave you with kind of a quote that I find fun. Is if you go from 36% on fire to 27% on fire, you're still on fire. Right? So.
I had that on one of my slides once.
Huh?
I had that on one of my slides once.
Did you? Did I take it from you?
Maybe.
Copyright.
I think I took it from somebody else, so.
I took the question party from you.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Any questions? Nothing? Was that better? I know it wasn't a hands-on workshop, so I do apologize for that. You can blame Benny and the organizers for not having a Hive and Graylog environment to play with. But I got through that, and I hope it was somewhat interactive and discussion-based. I'll be here at the con. If you want to talk to me more about either the Hive or specifics on automation orchestration, let me know. Other than that, I hope it was somewhat useful. You learned something, take away something. And at the end of the day, take away one thing. What can it be?
Get a button.
Phishing button. Phishing button. All right, good. Just step one of automation.
Fire.
And fire.
Lots of fire.
All right, thank you guys.
Oh, thanks, yeah.
I'm very people watch them.
Why did you say
I just got
MSSP, sorry.
Oh, you mean managed service?
I just bought the
What about
everyone has
what were you bringing up?
full longer collection.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
They have to sell liquid lights all the time.
Yeah, we're good. By the way, between 350 and... No, 350 and 410, we took a break.
Oh, I'll let it roll.
You'll let it roll?
I'll let it roll.
Okay.